There is a short scene in The Amazing World of Gumball where Richard Watterson stands in a kitchen he has lived in for years, holding a piece of paper that says his father is alive, and his face does this thing where the cartoon mugging falls away and you can see, just for a moment, a middle-aged man who has been waiting for a letter his entire life. The show plays it for laughs. It almost always plays things for laughs. But the longer you watch this show, the more you start to notice that almost every character in Elmore is carrying something the bright colors and the bouncing animation are quietly distracting you from. Tonight, here on Cortoon, we are going through all of it, character by character. The small ones, the background ones, the famous ones, the ones with backstories the show told you outright, and the ones it only ever hinted at. So get comfortable, turn the lights down, and if you have not subscribed yet, it really does help us keep making these. We can start with Richard, because in a way, Richard is the show's quiet center of gravity. On the surface, he is the goof. He is the pink rabbit with the round belly and the sandwich obsession and the catastrophic lack of common sense. He is the kind of cartoon father who exists to be louder and dumber than his children. The kind of character whose entire function in most family sitcoms is to set up the next joke. And the show absolutely uses him that way. But it also keeps returning, over and over, to the fact that Richard's life did not begin the way most sitcom fathers' lives begin. His father, Frankie Watterson, walked out on him and on Richard's mother, Granny Jojo, when Richard was a small child. The series frames this in different ways across different episodes. Sometimes it is a punchline, sometimes it is the engine of the entire plot, but the basic shape of it stays consistent. Frankie left. Jojo, the formidable, sharp-tongued, slightly overbearing grandmother we eventually meet, raised Richard alone, and she did it by telling him a comforting lie. She told him that his father had died. She told him this so that he would not spend his childhood waiting for a man who was not coming back. And every time the show returns to this thread, it makes sure you understand how that lie shaped him. Richard grew up believing that the universe had taken his father from him without warning. He grew up believing that fathers were temporary, that life was something that arrived and then left, that the safest thing a person could do was to expect nothing, want nothing, and stay still. Watch the show with that in mind, and his laziness, his refusal to grow up, his fear of work and responsibility and ambition begins to look less like comedy and more like a man frozen in the moment he was told his father was gone. There is even an episode where Richard's potential is laid out for him, where he is shown the version of himself that would have existed if he had ever been told the truth. And the version is competent, accomplished, and quietly devastating to look at, because the show is not just telling you that Richard is wasted potential, it is telling you that he was wasted on purpose, by a grief that was handed to him as a child, and that he never put down. Then there is Nicole, who is in some ways the inverse of Richard, and in some ways exactly the same wound presented from the opposite side. Nicole is the blue cat. She works at the Rainbow Factory. She is the family's only consistent earner, the one who holds the household together through sheer force of will. And she is, depending on which episode you are watching, either the most patient parent on television or one breath away from a complete nervous collapse. Several episodes have gone directly into her childhood, and the picture they paint is bleak in a very specific, very recognizable way. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Senecourt, were ambitious people. They wanted excellence from her. They enrolled her in a martial arts school where the standard of excellence was, the show tells us in no uncertain terms, brutal. She was not allowed to lose, she was not allowed to be tired, she was not allowed to be a child in any of the ways that children are normally allowed to be children. And the show is not coy about this. There is an episode where she returns to her parents' house, and the household runs on a kind of cold, military precision that makes you understand instantly why she married Richard. Richard is everything her parents were not. Richard is soft and lazy and warm and unambitious, and he loves her without grading her. She did not marry beneath herself, she married away from her family, and the show treats that with a kind of quiet respect. It also shows you the cost. Nicole is permanently exhausted. Nicole is one critical comment away from a meltdown that levels city blocks. Nicole spends a huge portion of the series suppressing a version of herself that was trained, from childhood, to win at any cost. What unsettles you is not that she is angry. What unsettles you is that she has spent her entire adult life trying very hard not to be the person her parents made her into. And the show keeps reminding you, gently, that you do not get to choose whether that person is still inside you. Their son Gumball, the 12-year-old blue cat at the center of the show, would seem at first to be the least likely candidate for a disturbing backstory. He is the protagonist. He is the audience surrogate. He goes to school, he has a crush, he has adventures with his brother, he gets into and out of trouble in a way that is meant to feel familiar and safe. But there is a thread that runs through the series, and it gets more explicit the longer you watch, which suggests Gumball is, in a quiet way, aware that he is a character. He breaks the fourth wall casually. He talks about animation, about pacing, about jokes that are about to happen. Several episodes are built around the structure of the show itself, becoming the conflict, where he and Darwin have to navigate the rules of a sitcom or a video game or a fairy tale, and Gumball is always the first to notice. The interpretive reading, the one the show seems to be inviting without quite saying outright, is that Gumball has a vague but persistent sense that his life is not entirely his own, that there is a logic operating just outside the edges of his town that he cannot quite see, but can sometimes feel. The series never tips this into horror. It uses it for jokes, mostly, and for the occasional moment of tenderness when Gumball seems to realize that his family, his friends, his school, are being held in place by something larger than him. Sit with it for a while, and it starts to read as a very quiet kind of dread. Gumball is a child who suspects, in the way children sometimes do, that he is not quite real, and the show keeps not contradicting him. Darwin is a more straightforward case, if straightforward is the right word for any of this. Darwin Watterson, the orange goldfish with legs, is canonically a pet who grew legs and was adopted by the family as a brother. The series is very clear about this. There is a flashback, returned to several times across the run, in which the small fish in the bowl on the table looks up at Gumball one day and stands up on legs that have just sprouted, and Gumball, with the absolute generosity of a child, calls him brother. From that moment, Darwin is a Watterson. He goes to school, he sleeps in the room Gumball sleeps in, he has a voice, opinions, a personality that becomes one of the gentlest and most morally clear in the show. Every so often the series lets you remember that Darwin used to live in a bowl, and that he is the only one of his kind that the family ever had. There is an episode about his memory, where Darwin describes the experience of being a fish before he had a name, where he describes a kind of nothingness, a small wet world, a constant sense that the bigger world outside the bowl was unreachable. He describes, in the language a child would use, what it felt like to be hungry and to be fed by a hand whose face he could not properly see. The show plays this for sweetness, the same way it plays everything for sweetness. But the implication, if you let yourself sit with it, is that Darwin's earliest memories are of a kind of soft, quiet captivity, and that he is grateful, every single day, that he was let out of it. Grateful is a heavier word than it looks. Darwin is the most loving character in the show because he knows, in a way the rest of his family does not, that this could all very easily have not been his life. Anais is the youngest child in the Watterson family. She is 4 years old. She is, by every measure the show offers, smarter than every adult around her. She does her parents' taxes. She solves problems her father cannot even understand. She has, at 4, the vocabulary and the analytical capacity of a senior academic, and the series treats this not as a magical power, but as a kind of curse. Anais is the only person in her family who fully understands what is happening at any given moment. Anais is the only person at her school who is capable of grasping the absurdity of the world she lives in. She has friends, she has a stuffed donkey she carries everywhere, and there are episodes where the show very deliberately lets her be a child, but the running thread underneath is loneliness. The series keeps returning to scenes in which Anais is sitting in a room full of people who love her and is the only one who can see what is really going on, and it is honest enough to let you see how heavy that is. There is a particular episode that focuses on her isolation, on the fact that she does not have peers, that no one her own age can really keep up with her, and no one older takes her seriously, and the show lets that ache sit on screen for longer than a cartoon usually would. It is a quiet kind of disturbing. Anais is not in danger. Anais is not being mistreated. Anais is being raised by people who love her and could not, even on their best day, see her clearly. And the show is not pretending that is fine. Granny Jojo, Richard's mother, deserves her own moment here, because she is the source of one of the show's most quietly upsetting reveals. We have already touched on the central fact, that she told Richard his father was dead when his father was, by most accounts, very much alive and had simply left. The series eventually has Frankie return to the family, And the episode in which this happens does not let Jojo off the hook. She is not a villain. She is not a monster. She is a woman who was abandoned by a man she loved, who was left alone with a small son, and who made a decision in a moment of grief that she then had to defend for the rest of her life. The show is sympathetic to her. It is also clear that the decision had a cost, and that Richard paid most of it. There is a moment where Jojo and Frankie are in the same room for the first time in decades, and the series, for once, just lets it be sad. Jojo is also a comic figure, an overbearing grandmother who barges into the house and rearranges everything and infantilizes her adult son, and the show uses her that way constantly. But the part that does not let you settle is that her overbearing love is the same love that made her tell the lie. She wanted to protect him so hard that she shaped him into a person who could not protect himself. That is not a small thing for a kids' show to put in the middle of a comedy episode about a grandmother visiting. But Gumball puts it there anyway, and trusts you to notice. Frankie Watterson, when he finally arrives, is a difficult character to read. He is charming in a way that immediately makes you nervous. He is the kind of charming that is too easy, the kind that has had a lot of practice. The series introduces him as a stranger, lets the family take him in, lets him win Richard over with the kind of fatherly attention Richard has been starving for his entire life, and then very gently lets you see that Frankie is not quite what he appears to be. The show stops short of calling him a con man, but the implication is there. He is a person who left, who survived by his wits, who learned to be liked, and who has come back because being liked by his family is easier than being alone. And the unsettling thing, the thing the show does not let you off the hook for, is that Richard does not really care. Richard's father is back. Richard's father is paying attention to him. Richard's father is, for the first time in his life, present. The rest of the moral arithmetic, what Frankie did, why he left, what he is doing now, melts away in the warmth of that. The series is not telling you Richard is wrong to want this. It is telling you that some children will accept any version of a parent because any version is better than the absence, and that absences shape people in ways that take entire lives to undo. Penny Fitzgerald is, in a lot of ways, the show's most quietly radical character, and her backstory is one of the few things in the entire series that the show treats with something close to reverence. For most of the early seasons, Penny is a peanut. She has a peanut shell, 2 little antlers, and a sweet, gentle voice, and she is the girl Gumball is in love with from the first episode onward. The series plays this as a normal cartoon crush for a long time, and then, midway through its run, it does something genuinely strange and brave. It tells you that Penny is not a peanut at all. The peanut shell is a shell. Her family are shapeshifters, and they have lived for generations under the assumption that they have to hide what they really look like. Because what they really look like underneath is, in the show's vocabulary, monstrous, in the sense of being uncontained, fluid, capable of becoming anything. Penny's father, Patrick Fitzgerald, is the one who enforces this. He is a tall, hard, slightly terrifying man, and he is very clear with his daughters that the shell is not optional. It is not a costume. It is a discipline. It is the price of being acceptable. Penny, in the episode that finally addresses this, breaks the shell. She breaks it on purpose, in front of Gumball, in a moment of trust, and the show treats it as one of the most important moments in the entire series. What comes out is not a single fixed creature. What comes out is a being that can be anything she feels. A butterfly, an antlered animal, something with wings, something with fire. Her body is, in this reading, her emotional truth, and her father raised her to be ashamed of it. The piece the show is careful to make sure you do not miss is that Penny was raised inside a kind of generational lie. Her family told her, lovingly, gently, completely, that the only way to be safe in the world was to never let anyone see her real shape. And it took her years, and a boy who loved her without conditions, to even consider the possibility that they might have been wrong. Patrick Fitzgerald, Penny's father, is one of the more interesting villains the show plays with, because he is not really a villain. He is a father who has decided, somewhere along the way, that the rules he was raised under are the rules that will protect his daughters, and he enforces them with a coldness that the series, very deliberately, lets you find frightening. He hates Gumball. He hates Gumball not because Gumball is a cat, although he will sometimes pretend that is the reason, but because Gumball is the person who saw his daughter without the shell and did not run. The show treats this with surprising sympathy. There is an episode in which Patrick, drunk on his own sense of how things ought to be, ends up confronting Gumball in a way that is meant to be intimidating and ends up being mostly sad. He is a man who built his entire life around a set of rules that turned out to be unnecessary, and the realization comes slowly, painfully, and only partially, and the show does not pretend it ever fully arrives. He is a father who was wrong about something fundamental and who is, in his own way, trying. That is, in the universe of this show, what counts for redemption, and the series is honest about how partial it is. Polly Fitzgerald, Penny's mother, is a softer figure, but the show does not let her off the hook either. She knew what Patrick was teaching their daughters. She participated in it. She is gentler about it, more inclined to comfort than to scold. But she still wore the shell, still passed it down, still raised her children inside a story that was not true. The series is not interested in punishing her for this. It is interested in showing you that quiet, well-meaning people can inherit a lie and pass it on without ever quite intending to, and that the cost of that lands on the next generation, who have to either accept it or break it. Polly does, eventually, see Penny without her shell, and the show lets her get to a place of acceptance, but it does not pretend that the years of complicity did not happen. Hector Jotunheim is one of the show's most quietly tragic figures, and his backstory is laid out with surprising clarity. He is enormous. He is a kaiju-sized creature who lives, somehow, in a small house with his mother, who is a witch. He is a teenager. He is gentle, kind, slow to anger, and visibly aware that he is too big for the world he lives in. His mother spends most of her time keeping him calm, because when Hector loses control of his emotions, when he panics or rages or feels things too strongly, his body cannot contain it. He grows, he destroys things, he becomes the monster the town has always quietly suspected him of being. The unsettling thing is that his mother is, in her own way, doing her best. She is trying to protect him. She is trying to protect the town. She is trying to keep her son from becoming what her son could become if his feelings ever got too big. But the cost of that, the cost the show makes you sit with, is that Hector has spent his entire childhood being told that his feelings are dangerous. He has been raised in a state of permanent emotional management. He has learned, by the time we meet him, that to be a good person is to be a small person, and to be a small person is to never let yourself feel anything fully. There is an episode that builds entirely around what happens when that finally breaks, and it is, by Gumball standards, devastating. It does not have a clean ending. It does not have a moment where everyone learns a lesson and the world is fine. It has a moment where you understand that Hector has been suffering for as long as he has been alive, that no one in town has ever really seen him, and that his mother, who loves him, has been part of the problem. Mrs. Jotunheim, Hector's mother, is the witch in the woods. She has the pointed hat and the magic and the slightly unsettling cottage. The show treats her, on the surface, as a comic side character, but her real role in the series is one of guilt. She is the one who, the series implies, is responsible for the conditions Hector lives under. The interpretive reading, which the show invites openly, is that she is using magic to keep her son small, both literally and figuratively, because she is afraid of what he is. She is afraid of him. She is also, as the show is careful to show you, terrified of losing him. This is one of the more grown-up dynamics the series ever attempts, the parent who is afraid of her own child, who loves him without limit, and who cannot tell anymore where the love ends and the management begins. Mrs. Jotunheim is not evil. She is doing what she thinks she has to. She is also, very clearly, doing it wrong. Carrie Kruger, the ghost girl at Gumball's school, is a character whose backstory the show explores in slow, careful pieces. She is a ghost. She is canonically dead. She is in school anyway, because the show's universe does not particularly distinguish between the living and the dead in terms of who gets to be a student. She has parents. Her father is a ghost too, a quiet, brooding figure who lives in a house that is slightly more haunted than it needs to be. The series does not give you the exact mechanics of her death. It implies that it happened a long time ago, that she has been a child ghost for far longer than she has been a living child, and that the experience of being permanently 12, of watching the living grow up around her, of being incapable of touching food or feeling temperature in the way other children do, has shaped her into the slightly sardonic, slightly melancholy person she is when we meet her. There is an episode that focuses on her relationship with food, in which her hunger is revealed to be an existential rather than a physical thing, a hunger for taste, for sensation, for the experience of being alive. Her boyfriend, eventually, is Darwin, and the show plays this with a great deal of sweetness. But the implication that sits underneath the cute moments is that Carrie is in love with someone who will grow up and grow old and eventually be gone, and that she will still be 12 in a hallway, hoping someone remembers she was there. The show does not say this out loud. The show lets you arrive at it. Rob, who began the series as a background character with a single eye in the middle of his face, becomes, over time, one of the show's most genuinely upsetting figures. And his backstory is unusual, in that it is also a backstory about the show itself. Rob was originally a character without much of an identity. He was around, he was in crowd scenes, he had a name, possibly, although the show plays games with whether anyone actually knew it. And then he fell into the void. The void, in the show's universe, is the place where forgotten characters go. It is canonically the place where mistakes the show made, characters that were never developed, animation errors, ideas that did not quite work, are stored. It is a kind of garbage chute for fictional things, and Rob, in the episode that introduces this concept, ends up trapped there. He spends, in his own subjective time, what feels like a very long while in the void, surrounded by things that were supposed to exist and did not, and when he finally claws his way out, he comes out broken, he comes out angry, he comes out aware, in a way no character should ever be aware, that he is a character, that he was nearly erased, that the writers of his world considered him so unimportant they almost let him cease to exist. And he comes out wanting revenge. The show treats this with a strange combination of comedy and horror. Rob's villainy is often funny. His schemes are absurd, but the underlying premise, that here is a person who knows he is in a story and knows the story does not need him, is one of the most genuinely upsetting ideas the series ever played with. He is a character who was abandoned by his own writers and who can never quite stop being aware of it. Mr. Small, the school counselor, is one of those characters who arrives looking like a one-note joke and slowly reveals a backstory that does not match the joke at all. He is the hippie counselor. He believes in crystals, in vibrations, in alternative medicine, in whatever spiritual fashion is closest to hand. He gives the children at Gumball's school terrible advice with enormous sincerity. He is, on the surface, a parody, a soft target the show could mock indefinitely. The series, over time, does something interesting with him. It shows you where he lives. He lives in a van. He is, by every reasonable measure, in a state of permanent, quiet poverty. He has no real authority at the school, no real respect from his colleagues, no real life outside the building. He is alone. He is, in the few episodes that focus on him, deeply lonely. And his beliefs, which the show plays for comedy, also start to look like the things a man might hold on to if nothing else in his life has gone right. The series does not exactly ask you to feel sorry for him. It just lets you see the shape of his life, and then leaves you alone with what you saw. He is one of the clearest examples of how Gumball uses the form of a joke as a delivery mechanism for something quietly sad. Larry Needlemeyer, sometimes called Lawrence, sometimes called just Larry, is the man who works every job in Elmore. He works at the supermarket. He works at the gas station. He works at the fast food restaurant. He works at the cinema. If there is a counter in this town, Larry is behind it. The show treats this as a running gag for several seasons, a kind of magical convenience in which Larry is just wherever the plot needs a worker, and then, eventually, it pulls the thread, and the thread does not stop coming. Larry is not magical. Larry is just exhausted. Larry is working all of these jobs because he has to. The series eventually devotes whole episodes to what Larry's life is actually like, and the picture it gives you is bleak. He is, in his own quiet way, the most overworked person in the show. He has dreams that have been deferred for so long they have curdled into something that is not quite dreams anymore. He has, the show implies, watched the people of Elmore treat him as scenery for so long that he has more or less become scenery in his own life. The thing the show lays out in clean lines is that Larry's situation is not really anyone's fault, exactly. He is not being victimized by a single villain. He is being slowly ground down by the ordinary functioning of a small town that needs a Larry in order to keep operating. The series, by the end, treats him with a great deal of dignity. It does not pretend his life is fine. Miss Simian, the children's teacher, is one of the show's most explicit cases of a disturbing backstory hiding inside a comedy character. She is canonically very, very old. The series is happy to remind you of this in almost every episode. She is presented as a relic, a fossil teacher, a creature who has been at the front of a classroom for a span of time that does not really make sense for any normal teacher. The show eventually gives you a number, in flashbacks and in dialogue, that places her age in the millions of years. She is, in the show's universe, one of the oldest living things on the planet. The implication of that, when you sit with it, is genuinely strange. Miss Simian has been a teacher of small children for longer than civilizations have existed. She has, somewhere in her memory, watched everything she ever cared about die. The show plays this for laughs. It uses her age as the punchline of 100 small jokes. But the interpretive reading is hard to avoid. That her cruelty, her bitterness, her constant, exhausted disgust with the children she teaches is the natural result of being asked to keep performing the same job, with the same kind of student, across geological timescales. She is not evil. She is tired in a way no one alive can really understand, and the series keeps showing you the shape of that tiredness whether or not it ever uses those words. Principal Brown is the school's head, a small brown creature with a faintly avuncular voice, and the show treats him for most of its run as the establishment, the figure of authority, the man whose job is to be slightly disappointed in the children he is responsible for. Then, partway through the series, it begins to deepen him in a way that does not quite line up with the comic register he had been operating in. He is in love with Miss Simian. They are, the show eventually reveals, in a relationship. The depiction of this relationship is one of the series' stranger choices, a deliberately unsettling pairing in which the kind, slightly weary principal is romantically entangled with the cruel, geologically old teacher who terrifies his students. The show, rather than playing this as pure comedy, lets it sit as something genuinely uncomfortable. It implies that Principal Brown has chosen, for reasons the series is not interested in explaining, the loneliest, hardest, most difficult possible partner. It implies that he is in love with someone who is, in many real senses, beyond him, beyond his timescale, beyond his ability to truly know. There is a tenderness in how he looks at her that is not quite returned, and the show does not flinch from showing you that. He is a man, the interpretive reading goes, who has settled for being loved a little bit by a person who has loved a great many things and watched all of them go. Tobias Wilson, the multicolored boy at Gumball's school, looks for most of the series like a one-note bully, the swaggering, athletic, slightly stupid figure who exists to push back against the protagonists. The show plays him this way for a long time, and then, gradually, begins to give you pieces of his home life that complicate the picture. His father, Harold Wilson, is one of the show's most ridiculous figures, a man whose career has consisted of selling worthless objects with great enthusiasm, a salesman in every sense of the word, the kind of father who treats his own son as a kind of product to be promoted. His mother, Jackie, is gentler, but she is also locked inside the family's relentless materialism, the constant chase for status, the comparison to neighbors, the insistence that the children be visibly successful at all times. Tobias has siblings, several of them, and the household is one of the loudest and most chaotic in Elmore. The show plays this for jokes, but underneath the jokes you can see what kind of person Tobias is going to become if no one intervenes. And the series is honest about that. He is being raised to believe that confidence is identity, that loudness is value, that anything you can sell is true. What unsettles you is not that his parents are monsters, they are not. What unsettles you is that they are, in their own ridiculous way, succeeding, and that Tobias is becoming exactly the person they are training him to be. Banana Joe is, at first glance, a pure comic character, a banana with a face and a hat who tells jokes nobody really laughs at, and who keeps showing up because the show clearly enjoys having him in scenes. His backstory is sketched lightly, in small pieces across the series, and the picture you eventually assemble is more melancholy than you would expect. His father, Banana Bob, is a banana too, an older banana who has, the show makes very clear in several episodes, very obviously begun to deteriorate. Bananas, in the show's logic, age the way bananas do. They develop spots, they soften, they eventually become inedible. The series does not flinch from this. There is an episode where the family openly discusses what is happening to the father, and the conversation is held in the bouncy, oblivious tone that Gumball uses for everything, but the content of the conversation is, in plain terms, about the visible biological decline of a parent. Banana Joe knows this. Banana Joe is going to inherit it. He is, in a way none of the other children at his school really are, aware that his species ages in days rather than years, that his father is going to be gone, and that he himself is going to follow. The show does not let you sit with this for very long at any given moment. It pivots away, it tells the next joke, but the pivot is the thing that lingers. Banana Joe is laughing because the alternative is not laughing, and the show knows that, and lets you know it too. Susie is the chin baby. She is a baby with what appears to be just a chin for a face, who attends Gumball's school for reasons the show does not entirely explain, and who exists in a register the series has more or less reserved for her alone. She is wordless, mostly. She makes a noise that is somewhere between a yawn and a laugh, and a primal vocalization that does not quite resemble language. She is presented as joyful, manic, slightly unsettling, and largely indestructible. The show eventually shows you her family. They live, the series implies, in conditions that are difficult to describe without flinching. Their house is rendered in a faintly upsetting way. Her father is a similar creature to her, but adult, and his presence is, in the few episodes that include him, something the show plays as both funny and faintly threatening. The unsettling thing about Susie is not really anything that happens to her. The unsettling thing is the suggestion, never quite stated, that she is being raised in a family that does not function the way other families do, that the rules her household runs on are not entirely shared with the rest of Elmore, and that the cheerfulness she carries around with her is the cheerfulness of a child who has learned, very young, that the world is strange, and that the only thing you can do about it is to be louder than the strangeness. The Donut Sheriff, sometimes referred to in dialogue as Donut Sheriff, sometimes simply as the Sheriff, is one of the show's running figures of small-town law enforcement. He is, literally, a donut. He wears a hat. He has a son, also a donut, who works under him in a junior capacity. The show plays him as broadly incompetent, but the implication, which the series returns to more than once, is that Elmore is a town in which crimes happen, sometimes serious ones, and the man charged with handling them is a fried pastry whose primary investigative method is shouting. The show is not particularly interested in critiquing this. It is content to use it as a backdrop. Let yourself sit with the implication, though, and the town the show is set in is one in which institutional protection is essentially absent, in which the people who are supposed to keep things in order are themselves either edible or visibly traumatized by their job, and in which the children growing up in this town are doing so in a place where the structures meant to keep them safe are jokes. The Donut Sheriff is one of the series' clearest signals that the universe of Gumball, charming as it looks, is one in which the adults are not really in charge. Mr. Robinson, whose full name is Gaylord Robinson, is the Watterson family's neighbor, and his role in the show is to be permanently, comprehensively unhappy. He is a stage performer, a children's entertainer of some kind, whose career has not gone the way he hoped it would, and he comes home every day to a house in which he is, by his own account and by everything the show shows you, miserable. He is married to Margaret Robinson, and the marriage is presented across the series with a kind of relentless, unsmiling honesty about how bad it has become. He does not enjoy her company. She does not enjoy his. They have a son named Rocky, who is an adult, who still lives in their house, who works as the school bus driver and the school janitor, and whatever other job the show needs him to occupy at any given moment, and who has a vague, drifting quality that suggests he has never quite been allowed to leave. The Robinsons are, in the show's small universe, a portrait of the kind of marriage that did not work, and that neither party has the energy to leave. The series is, again, both funny and unsparing about this. Mr. Robinson's hatred of Gumball is the closest thing he has to a hobby. He shouts at children because he cannot shout at the life he actually has. The show is generous enough to let you see, every so often, the moments where his anger collapses into the quieter, more honest grief underneath it. Margaret Robinson is the other half of that marriage, and the show is, if anything, even more honest about her. She is bored. She is, the series implies in several episodes, in love with someone other than her husband, or has been at various points, or wishes she were. She is, in any case, in a state of permanent low-grade dissatisfaction that the show does not bother to pretend is funny. There is an episode in which Mr. Robinson convinces himself, with some plausibility, that Margaret is having an affair, and the episode minds this for comedy, but does not deny the underlying premise. The Robinsons are unhappy in the specific way that long-married people become unhappy when neither of them has any vision of how to be happy without the other, and neither of them can quite bear the other any longer. What sits underneath it all is that they live next door to a family, the Wattersons, who are also imperfect but who are, by every measure the show offers, loved. The contrast is not accidental. Mr. and Mrs. Robinson are the cautionary version of the people the Wattersons might have become if Richard and Nicole had been a slightly worse fit. Rocky Robinson, their son, deserves his own moment, because the show treats him with a strange and somewhat tender kindness that it does not give to either of his parents. Rocky is, on paper, a failure. He is a grown man living with his parents. He works at his old school in 2 simultaneous jobs that do not pay enough for him to move out. He is, the show implies, deeply soft, somewhat foolish, occasionally brilliant in flashes, and consistently kind. He likes the children he transports. He likes the cafeteria food he prepares. He likes the music he plays in his free time. What the show does not quite let you ignore is that Rocky is living in his parents' house, watching them slowly destroy each other, and has apparently decided that this is the life he can have. The series does not punish him for this. The show is gentle with him. The gentleness is the thing that hurts. Rocky is one of the few characters in the show who seems content with very little, and the series is honest enough to let you wonder whether that contentment is wisdom or surrender. Tina Rex is the school's bully, a green Tyrannosaurus girl whose mere physical presence is enough to terrify everyone around her. The show plays her, for the first few seasons, as the stock antagonist, the bully whose job is to threaten and to be threatened in return. And then, midway through the series, it does the thing it does with all of these characters. It introduces her father. Tina's father is a much larger, much more obviously frightening dinosaur, and the show is very clear that he is, in their household, the source of the family's intimidating posture. He shouts, he looms. He treats his daughter with a kind of stern, performative disappointment that the show does not pretend is healthy. Once you have met him, you cannot unsee him in his daughter. Tina is not a bully because she is bad. Tina is a bully because she has been raised by a father who treats every interaction as a contest and who has communicated to her, in 1,000 small ways, that softness is failure. There is an episode in which Gumball stays at her house and sees this, and the episode handles it with surprising delicacy, refusing to either dismiss it as a joke or melodramatize it. The harder edge is that the series is plainly telling you that Tina is going to grow up to be like her father unless something changes. And Gumball is not particularly optimistic that something will. Bobert is the robot child in Gumball's class, and his backstory is one of the show's more genuinely science-fictional ideas, dressed up as a comic premise. Bobert is an artificial intelligence in a small metal body. He attends school. He has parents who are scientists. He is, as far as the show ever depicts, sentient in every sense that matters. His arc across the series is one of slowly figuring out what it means to be a person. He copies Gumball at one point, in an episode that should be funny but is actually quite frightening, replacing him in his own life, taking over his body language, his speech patterns, his relationships, in a way that suggests Bobert does not yet have a clear sense of where another person ends and he begins. He has weapons, he has internal armaments that activate in moments of stress, and the show does not pretend that this is fine. He is a child with the power to level a school, who is sometimes sad in the way children get sad, and whose body is not fully under his control. What lingers is that the adults in this town have apparently decided that the safest thing to do with him is to put him in a classroom and hope he does not have a bad day. The series plays this lightly. It probably should not. Alan, the balloon boy, is one of the show's most quietly contested characters, the figure around whom a great deal of fan discussion has historically gathered. On the surface, he is a paragon. He is kind, polite, generous, principled, the kind of student the school holds up as an example. He has a girlfriend, Carmen, whom he loves openly and consistently. He is, in every visible sense, exactly what a child his age is supposed to be. The interpretive reading the show invites is that Alan's goodness is, in some quiet way, performance, that he is too good to be entirely honest, that the smile is a kind of armor. The show plays with this idea. It has episodes in which Alan loses his composure and becomes briefly, startlingly cruel, and then immediately returns to the smile, as if nothing has happened. What the show is careful to leave ambiguous is that no one really knows what is going on inside Alan, including, possibly, Alan himself. The interpretive reading goes that he is a child who has been told for so long that he is wonderful, that he has been forced to make wonderful into a costume, and that what is underneath is not necessarily what the costume promises. The show never confirms this. The show also never quite denies it. Carmen, the cactus girl, is Alan's girlfriend, and her backstory is one the show fills in small, careful gestures rather than in a single explanatory episode. She is the daughter of a strict, traditional cactus family. The series treats her father as a stern figure who disapproves of Alan because Alan is not a cactus, and the conflict that runs underneath her relationship is, at its core, a conflict about what her family is willing to accept. The weight of it is not melodramatic. It is the simple, quiet fact that Carmen has been raised in a household where her choice of partner is considered a betrayal of who she is supposed to be, and that she has gone ahead with it anyway. The show does not make her suffer for it in spectacular ways. It just keeps reminding you, in tiny moments, that her relationship is being held against the pressure of a family that would prefer she did otherwise. There is a particular weight to the way she defends Alan in moments where her father is in the room, and the show is careful to let you see how much of her energy goes into not flinching. Ocho, the 8-bit insect boy, has a backstory that the show frames primarily as comedy, but that, when you assemble it, is one of the more unnerving in the cast. He is a pixelated arachnid in a town of analog creatures. He attends school. He is, in early episodes, presented as a kind of cute curiosity. And then, gradually, the series reveals that Ocho is actually quite dangerous. He has a temper. He has, the show implies, killed insects of his own species in disputes over territory or food. He has, in at least one episode, threatened the lives of his classmates. He has a family that is, in their own way, a kind of insect crime family. And the show treats this as a recurring joke that the protagonists keep stumbling into. What stays with you is that the school appears to have made no real adjustment to having a child capable of this in the building. Ocho is allowed to be a student. Ocho is allowed to sit in class. Ocho is allowed to be near other children. The town has decided, the series implies, that Ocho is going to be Ocho, and that the cost of containing him would be larger than the cost of just letting him exist. He is one of several characters in the show whose presence quietly tells you that Elmore has, in many ways, given up on protecting its children from each other. Idaho is, in the most literal sense, a potato. He attends Gumball's school. He has, for most of the series, no clear speech, only a kind of low, slow groan that the show treats as language for the people who can understand him. He has, the show implies, a family of potatoes who live in a field outside the town. His role in the show is mostly that of a stock background student, the kind of character whose function is to fill space, but the series is honest about him in a way that ends up being unsettling. Idaho is a potato in a town that contains creatures who will eat him. He goes to school with people who, if pressed, could legitimately consume him. The show plays this for jokes occasionally, but the underlying premise, if you let yourself think about it, is a quietly horrible one. Idaho is living his life next to predators, and his only real defense is that everyone around him has agreed, more or less, not to do the thing that would be most natural. The show does not push this. The show does not need to. It simply lets it sit, and lets you notice on your own. Leslie, the flower at the school, is similar in structure but more emotionally explicit. Leslie is, as far as the show ever establishes, a sentient flower with a face and a voice, growing out of a small pot. He is gentle, sensitive, slightly anxious. He is presented as kind, and the show treats him with affection. Every so often, the series reminds you that Leslie is a flower, and that flowers, in the universe of this show, are still cut, still pruned, still given as gifts. There is an episode that touches on this, on the idea that someone in town has cut flowers in their home, that the gifts being given between characters are, in a literal sense, the remains of creatures who could speak. The show plays it with the lightest possible touch, and then walks away. Leslie is one of the characters in the show whose entire existence is haunted by a thing the series does not want to look at directly. He is a child whose species is, in his world, an object. Anton is the slice of toast. He has a face, arms, and the absolute reckless confidence of a piece of bread that has not yet been eaten. His backstory is, in a strict sense, the simplest of any character in the show, because Anton dies constantly. The series is very clear about this. Anton is a child made of toast, and toast is a fragile material, and Anton, across the series, is destroyed in a wide variety of ways. He breaks, he is bitten, he is set on fire, he gets soggy in rain, he drowns in water. The show, every time, brings him back the next episode as if nothing had happened. The interpretive reading the show invites here is that Anton has a family of toast people who are, by some unexplained process, able to remake him whenever he is destroyed. That he is part of a kind of toast resurrection economy in which dying is just an inconvenience, and that he has come to treat his own death with a kind of casual lack of concern. Sit with it for a moment, and what registers is that Anton's relationship with mortality is, by the standards of any other species in the show, broken. He does not fear pain in the way other children fear it. He does not value his life in the way other children value it. He has been raised inside a kind of permanent low-grade trauma loop, and the show plays it for laughs because there is, honestly, nothing else to do with it. Juke is the boombox kid, a character whose entire body is a portable music player, and whose speech, for the entirety of his time on the show, consists of rhythmic vocalizations rather than language. He has friends, he has feelings, he is present in many of the school's group scenes, but he cannot, in any straightforward sense, talk. The series implies that the people closest to him understand him, that there is a fluency in the noises he makes, that those who care enough can learn. What the show never quite addresses directly is the loneliness of being a child whose interior life is locked behind a kind of language that most of the people around you will not bother to learn. Juke is sometimes laughing. Juke is sometimes sad. The show is careful to give him both registers. And whenever it focuses on him, you can feel the gap between what is going on inside him and what the world around him is willing to hear. Clayton is the shapeshifter, a small gray blob of clay with no fixed features who attends Gumball's school. He has, for most of his time on the show, no eyes, no mouth, no permanent form, and yet he is fully one of the kids, fully integrated, with a long list of stories he tells about his past, all of which contradict each other. He has been, at various points in his own claims, a soldier, a pop star, a spy, a chef, a survivor of disasters that have not happened in any chronology that could fit a child's life. The show, eventually, gives you the punchline. Clayton is lying. He has been lying about all of it. He is, the series makes clear, a pathological liar, a child for whom the truth has become so unimportant that he is no longer sure where the lies end and the genuine memories begin. The interpretive reading is that Clayton, having no fixed form, having no face, having no body that is permanently anything, has constructed an identity out of pure story, and that the stories have, over time, replaced anything real. The show is gentle with him. The show is sympathetic. It is honest that the lies are a kind of survival, that a person with no shape might need to invent shapes to be a person at all. It also does not pretend that this is a healthy way to live, or that the friends Clayton has made by lying to them are friends in any sense that will hold weight. Sarah G. Lato is the fangirl character, a two-dimensional human cutout who first appears as a background student and is gradually given a much larger role as a kind of meta-commentator on the show itself. She has a notebook. She ships characters. She wants Gumball and Penny together. She wants Darwin and Carrie together. She is, in many ways, an in-universe stand-in for the kind of viewer the show suspects is watching it. What the series plays with both affection and discomfort is that Sarah's interest in her classmates is not entirely healthy. She watches them, she follows them. She intervenes in their lives in ways that are, from any reasonable point of view, deeply invasive. The show has an entire episode that examines this, in which Sarah's obsession crosses the line from friendly enthusiasm into something genuinely unsettling, and the series is honest about how unsettling it is. It is also honest, in a way that is half self-critique, that Sarah is doing the thing that the audience does. The show is showing you a girl who cannot stop curating other people's lives and inviting you to wonder whether you are doing something similar by watching it. Masami is the Cloud Girl, the daughter of one of the wealthiest families in Elmore, and her backstory is one of the show's clearest portraits of money damaging a child. Her father, who in the show's world is a famous and powerful executive, has built his fortune by, the show implies, exploiting almost everyone he has ever come into contact with, including his employees, his investors, and at times his own family. Her mother, Felicity Parham, is a woman whose entire personality has been arranged around the maintenance of social status, and whose relationship with her own daughter is conducted largely through public appearances and through the management of an image. Masami, raised inside this, is one of the more visibly damaged children at the school. She is needy, she is fragile. She lashes out at her friends when she feels she is not being adequately admired, and then collapses in tears when they pull away. The show is careful to make clear that she is not a bad person. She is a child who has been given everything but the basic, unconditional attention that children need, and the substitution she has been offered, money, status, public visibility, has not been enough. What hurts is that her parents are still her parents. The series does not give her a way out. The episodes that focus on her family end with her returning, in one way or another, to the people who shaped her, and the show is honest that she will be shaped further by them, and that there is nothing in particular that anyone can do about it. Felicity Parham, Masami's mother, deserves her own moment, because the show treats her with a kind of pitiless honesty that it does not extend to many other adult characters. She is socially obsessed. She is a snob. She judges the other parents of Elmore openly, and her judgment is the engine of several plot lines. There is an episode in which her household is invaded by the Wattersons, and the episode mines a great deal of comedy from how horrified Felicity is by the contrast between her own home and theirs. Underneath the comedy, the series is showing you a woman who has staked her entire identity on a comparison, on being better than her neighbors, on having a house that wins. And what registers is that she is, by every metric she has chosen, winning. Her house is bigger. Her car is bigger. Her clothes are more expensive. She is, the show keeps showing you, miserable. She is desperately lonely inside the success she has spent her life arranging. Her marriage is one of the show's most clearly hollow ones, even by Elmore standards. Her daughter does not really like her. And Felicity, by the time the show is willing to look at her plainly, is one of the saddest characters in the entire cast. A person who built a wall around herself out of beautiful objects and then realized, too late, that no one was going to climb it. Marvin Finkelheimer, sometimes called the Old Man, sometimes addressed by different names in different episodes, is the elderly character who appears at the supermarket, at the laundromat, at the various civic spaces of Elmore. The show plays him for jokes about aging, about loneliness, about the slow drift of an old person who has outlived most of the people who once loved him. His backstory is sketched lightly. He had a wife, he had a life, he had a career, the contours of which the show only hints at. And now he is alone. The series is, in the few episodes that focus on him, surprisingly moving on this point. There is an episode in which he is taken in, briefly, by other characters, and the simple act of being noticed by anyone at all is enough to crack his composure. He is one of the show's most visible reminders that the universe of Gumball, charming as it is one in which people get old, are forgotten, and continue living anyway, in the corners of stores, surrounded by strangers. The peace that holds you is the gentleness of it. The show does not make his loneliness a tragedy. It just shows it to you, every so often, and lets you decide what to do with it. The universe, who appears as a recurring character in a handful of episodes, is the closest thing the show has to a deity, a vast, slightly tired entity who is responsible, in some metaphysical sense, for how the world of Elmore works. The show treats him, when he appears, as both comic and ominous. He is bored, he is overworked, he is doing the job of being the underlying logic of an entire universe, and he is, in the show's framing, not particularly invested in any individual outcome. What lingers, when you let yourself sit with it, is that the show has explicitly told you that there is a being above its own narrative who is mostly indifferent to what happens within it. The town is, in the most literal sense the series is willing to make it, watched over by someone who has stopped caring. The show plays this lightly, the way it plays everything, but the implication that the characters of Elmore are alive inside a creation whose creator is not particularly paying attention sits underneath several of the show's deeper episodes and is one of the more genuinely upsetting metaphysical premises a children's cartoon has ever tried to introduce. The Reaper, the show's version of personified death, also makes a recurring appearance, usually as a small dark figure with a scythe who shows up at moments when a character is, by the show's strange logic, almost about to die. He is given personality, mostly resigned, mildly annoyed, professionally weary. The series treats death as a job and the Reaper as the bureaucrat assigned to it. What unsettles is not that the Reaper exists. What unsettles is the implication, which the show makes very clear in several episodes, that the deaths happening in Elmore are not exceptional, that there is a steady traffic of citizens for whom this small figure has to show up, and that the people of the town are dying, regularly, off-screen, in numbers the show does not particularly care to count. The Reaper is, in his own quiet way, one of the most overworked characters in the cast. Mr. and Mrs. Senecourt, Nicole's parents, deserve a longer look than the show usually gives them, because they are the source of one of the central wounds of the series, even though they only appear in a handful of episodes. They are martial arts traditionalists. They are stern, exacting people who built a household around discipline and around the idea that excellence is the only acceptable outcome. Nicole has, by the time we meet her parents, spent her entire adult life trying to keep them at arm's length, and the few episodes that bring them back into her orbit show you, in plain terms, why. They do not approve of Richard. They do not approve of how she has raised her children. They do not approve, really, of her, of the life she has chosen, of the softness she has allowed herself to settle into. The show is careful when they finally do soften, when they finally do, in their own small ways, accept the family she has built, to make it clear that the softening is partial. They are still themselves. They are still going to leave the house and return to their own. They are still going to think about her, in their own minds, as the daughter who could have been more. What the show is willing to look at directly is that Nicole has not really gotten over what they did to her, and that, in the quiet way these things work, she is sometimes a harder mother to her own children than she means to be, because the standards she was raised under have not entirely left her. She is doing better than her parents did. The series is honest that doing better is, in this kind of inheritance, the best you can manage. Mr. Cuddles is one of the show's quieter pieces of horror, dressed up as a household joke. The Watterson family has a pet, in a tank, in their kitchen. The series is very clear about this, an iguana. He is large, he is silent, he is mostly motionless, and his name is Mr. Cuddles. The show eventually reveals, in flashbacks and offhand jokes, that this is not the original Mr. Cuddles. The original Mr. Cuddles was a hamster, a small soft animal that the children loved. The current Mr. Cuddles is, the show implies, the iguana that ate the hamster. The family has continued to call him Mr. Cuddles. The family has continued to feed him. The family has continued to keep him in the house as if nothing happened. The series plays this as a joke, the kind of dark, casual gag the show is famous for, but the underlying premise, if you let yourself look at it, is unsettling in a very specific way. The Wattersons are living with the creature that ate their first pet. They have, collectively, decided not to think about it. What stays with you is not really Mr. Cuddles. What stays with you is the family's quiet ability to absorb things they cannot fully process, to continue feeding the predator at the table, to keep using the name because changing the name would mean admitting what happened. The iguana is, in his own scaly way, one of the show's most honest portraits of how families survive things they should not. Sal Left Thumb is the show's recurring criminal, a sentient thumb in a hooded coat who appears, every so often, to commit one robbery or another in the small civic spaces of Elmore. He is, on the surface, comic. He is a thumb in a coat. The show treats him as the kind of low-rent villain that small towns produce, a man who is not really a threat to anything important, but who, by sheer persistence, keeps showing up. His backstory is gestured at across the series. He has, the show implies, never had a real job. He has, the show implies, never had a real family. He is, the show implies, surviving by the only means he has, the means his physical nature makes available to him, which is to steal small amounts of money, in inefficient ways, from places that probably should have caught him long ago. Again, the show is gentle. It does not really hate Sal. The series is honest that he is a man, of sorts, doing what he can with what he was born as. He is also, very clearly, the kind of person Elmore has failed to make room for. He is a citizen of a town that has decided he is a punchline, and the show, in its honest moments, lets you see what that costs him. Hot Dog Guy is a recurring student at Gumball's school, a sentient hot dog whose role for most of the series is to occupy crowd scenes and to appear, occasionally, in a speaking part. He is, the show eventually reveals, deeply lonely, the kind of student who watches the friendships of the other characters from a slight distance and aches to be inside them. There is an episode that focuses on him in this register, in which he becomes briefly obsessed with the closeness between Gumball and Darwin, in which he tries, in increasingly desperate ways, to insert himself into their friendship, and in which the show, rather than punishing him for this, treats him with surprising sympathy. The episode lets him be both ridiculous and sad. The unsettling note is the same one the show keeps returning to with these background students. Hot Dog Guy is a child who, by accident of birth or accident of biology or simple bad luck, has been positioned slightly outside the social warmth of his own school, and the series is honest that no one is really going to fix that for him. He is going to keep showing up. He is going to keep wanting in. He is going to keep, in small ways, being left at the edge of the frame, and the show is not pretending that the show itself is not part of that he is, in his own way, a character the writers have chosen to put at the edge. Daisy the donkey is not, strictly speaking, a character in the show, in that she is a character within the show, a children's television personality whose programs the Watterson children watch on their own television. She is a pink and white donkey, beloved, kind, gentle, the kind of figure designed to make small children feel safe. The series, in one of its bolder episodes, makes very clear what Daisy is. She is a costume. She is a performer. The person inside the costume is a tired actress whose life has been, the show implies, eaten by the role she plays. She does not really like children. She does not really like the work. She has been doing this for so long that she has come to resent the very softness she is paid to embody. The episode handles this with surprising tenderness. The show is not punishing her for being human. It is, in fact, sympathetic to her, in the way it is sympathetic to all of its small, exhausted adults. The gap is between the surface and the inside. Daisy is, on television, exactly what a small child wants. Inside, she is a person who has been worn down by the very work that made her famous. The show is honest that this is what celebrity is, for the people who do it, and the children watching Daisy the donkey in the Watterson living room are watching a performance that has cost the performer something the performer is no longer sure she will get back. Howdy, who appears in a few scenes set around Anais' life, is one of those small figures the show gives less than a full life and more than a single joke. He is, as far as the series ever lets you see him, an extremely cheerful child in an environment that is, by every measure the show is willing to offer, not entirely safe for children. The world of Anais is presented across the series as a kind of preschool version of Gumball's school, slightly softer, slightly more chaotic, slightly less malevolent, but still recognizably a place where small children are being shaped by adults who are not always paying attention. Howdy is, as far as the show ever lets you see him, fine. He is doing well. He is happy. What you notice is the disconnect between his cheerfulness and the visible chaos around him, and the implication, which the show invites without confirming, that he is happy because he has not yet noticed where he is. He is, in some sense, the show's portrait of a child whose innocence has not yet been used up, and the series is honest that this is a temporary state. William, the small floating eyeball who appears in many of Gumball's classroom scenes, is one of the show's quietly most interesting figures. He is silent for most of the series. He does not speak. He does not, in most episodes, have a personality beyond a vague, twitchy presence. And then, on occasion, the show reveals that William is in fact a spy. He works, the series implies, for Miss Simian. He reports on the children. He watches their misbehavior and tells her about it. He is, in the strict sense, an informant. The show plays this for jokes for several episodes, and then, in one of its more striking turns, dedicates an entire episode to the idea of giving William a voice, of letting him speak for the first time, of letting him tell the world what it has been like to be the only person in the room who has not been heard. The episode does not go where you expect. William is not, when he is finally allowed to speak, a good person. He has been listening for years, and the things he has come to think about the people around him are not flattering. The implication, which the show makes clear in its own oblique way, is that being silent for a very long time is not the same as being kind. William has been resentful, the series implies, for as long as anyone has known him, and being unable to speak has only let that resentment compound. He is, when the show lets you see him plainly, one of the more bitter characters in the cast. The DVDs, the Wattersons' television, the various recording devices and screens that populate the house are not, strictly speaking, characters, except that the show, every so often, decides that they are. There is an episode in which the DVD player becomes a kind of antagonist. There are episodes in which the television itself becomes a being with intentions. There are episodes in which the family's possessions seem to have, briefly, lives of their own. The series is playful with this. It is not really arguing for a coherent metaphysics of object consciousness. It keeps returning to the idea, in scattered moments, that the things inside the Watterson house, the appliances, the furniture, the small objects scattered around the kitchen, are watching too. The gentleness of it is what hits. The Wattersons are surrounded, in the show's universe, by sentient things, and they do not seem to particularly notice. The implication, that you might live your entire life surrounded by minds you have never bothered to acknowledge, is one of the more genuinely strange ideas the show plays with, even in passing. Jealousy, in the show's stranger episodes, is given a body, There is an episode in which Gumball's jealousy is removed from him and given physical form, and it walks around as a separate character for the duration. The series is, here, dipping into the territory of literalized emotion, the kind of move you would expect from an older animation tradition. The implication, when you sit with it, is genuinely unsettling. The show is telling you that the emotions of its characters are not quite contained inside them, that under certain conditions, the things they feel can step out and act on their own. Jealousy, in this episode, is not a metaphor. It is a person. It has goals. It has the appearance and the voice of Gumball, but it is not Gumball, and what it wants is not entirely what Gumball wants. The show is honest about how frightening this is. Gumball, by the end of the episode, has to reabsorb the version of himself that he was trying to be rid of, and the implication is that you do not get to be rid of any part of yourself for long, that the parts you try to refuse will find their way back. It is one of the more grown-up ideas a children's cartoon has ever tried, and the series, characteristically, plays it half for laughs and half for genuine unease. Bandage Boy, who appears in the school as one of Gumball's classmates, is a small creature whose entire body is wrapped in bandages. He never speaks in most of his appearances. He is, the show implies in the few scenes that focus on him, in some kind of permanent state of recovery, although from what is never explained. The series is not interested in his backstory in any sustained way. He is, mostly, a visual joke. But the joke, if you sit with it, is one of the show's quietly bleaker ones. Bandage Boy is a child whose body is, at all times, in a state of needing care. He attends school. He participates in the same activities as the other children. He is included, mostly. The show does not, ever, tell you what happened to him, or whether anything is being done about it, or whether anyone in his life is keeping track of how he is doing. He is one of those characters who exists in the corners of the show's frame, and whose presence, if you let yourself notice, is a small, persistent reminder that not every child in Elmore is okay, and that not every absence of explanation means an absence of pain. The treehouse, although it is not strictly a character, is treated by the show often enough as one that it deserves a brief mention. There is something in the Wattersons' garden, a small structure in the trees, that has appeared in a handful of episodes and that the series is careful not to fully explain. The interpretive reading invited is that the Wattersons' home is not entirely simple, that there are corners of their property that have, over time, accumulated something the family has not bothered to examine. The show plays this lightly. The implication that not every space in this fictional town is well lit, that there are places the camera turns away from, is itself one of the series' recurring quiet motifs. Disturbing, in the way Gumball is disturbing, is rarely loud. It is usually a corner of a frame the show has decided not to investigate. Tobias's siblings, who appear in the background of episodes set in the Wilson household, deserve their own moment, because they are one of the more revealing pieces of his backstory. There are several of them, of varying ages, varying levels of articulation, varying degrees of clear personhood. The show treats them, mostly, as scenery, as the chaotic environment in which Tobias was raised. Every so often you get a look at one of them, and the look suggests that the Wilson household is, in functional terms, not really capable of giving each of its children the kind of attention any one child needs. Tobias's confidence, his loudness, his constant performance of certainty, the show implies in passing, was forged in a house where if you did not make yourself loud, you did not really exist. He is competing, every day of his life, with siblings he loves and who love him, for a quantity of parental attention that was never sufficient to begin with. The series does not say this out loud. It simply lets you see the house every so often and trusts you to add it up. Penny's younger sister, who appears in a small number of episodes, is one of the show's quieter portraits of inherited fear. She is younger than Penny. She is, the series implies, raised inside the same family rules, the same insistence on the shell, the same quiet pressure to be acceptable. What the show is careful to show you, in the episodes that focus on the Fitzgerald household, is that the rules have not gone away just because Penny broke them. The family is, in some sense, still operating on the same logic. Polly and Patrick have softened, somewhat. They have accepted Penny, with some difficulty. The show is not pretending that the household has been remade. The younger generation is being raised inside a slightly modified version of the same anxiety, and the series is honest that change of this kind takes more than one breakthrough to arrive. Carrie's father, who appears in a few episodes set at her home, is one of the show's quietly more melancholy figures. He is a ghost, like her. He has been a ghost, the series implies, for longer than she has. He lives in a house that is permanently dim, permanently quiet, permanently haunted by its own emptiness. He loves his daughter. He loves her in the gentle, distant way that the dead love the dead. The show is honest in its handling of him, that his existence is, by any reasonable measure, sad. He is not in pain, he is not in danger. He is just, in some quiet way, no longer entirely participating in the world. And the series is honest that this is what being dead looks like, even in a show that has decided death is not really an exit. He is one of the show's most genuinely moving portraits of grief, even though, technically, no one in the family has actually been lost. The Cyclops, who appears as Rob's species in a few episodes, is also worth a moment. Rob has, the show implies, parents. He has a home, somewhere, even after the void. He has people who, in some sense, are responsible for him. The series is careful, when it shows you his family, to make clear that they have not really noticed what happened to him. They have, in their own way, let him drift into something the show calls villainy, because no one ever bothered to look at him closely enough to see what he was becoming. Again, the gentleness is the thing. Rob's family is not cruel. Rob's family is just inattentive in the way many families are inattentive. The series is honest that inattentiveness can be its own kind of damage, that you can be raised by people who love you and still grow up into a person who feels, deeply, that nobody saw you. Steve Small, Mr. Small's brother, is one of the characters the show uses very briefly to make a very pointed argument. He appears in a small number of episodes as a successful, wealthy, polished version of the man we know. He has a real job, he has a real home. He has the kind of life Mr. Small could have had if a few things had gone differently. The series is brutal about the comparison. It does not hate Steve. It does not even particularly like him. It simply puts him next to his brother and lets you draw the conclusion the show wants you to draw, which is that Mr. Small could have been Steve, and Steve could have been Mr. Small, and that the things that determine which one any given person ends up being are mostly not in that person's control. The piece the show leaves you with is that Mr. Small knows this. He has, the series implies, spent years quietly comparing himself to his more successful brother, and he has, over time, built a worldview that requires him to dismiss everything Steve has as superficial in order to stay sane. The interpretive reading is that his alternative medicine, his crystals, his vibrations, are not really about belief, they are about survival. They are the things he has had to make himself believe in order to not collapse under the weight of what he did not become. The French school inspector, who appears in a small number of episodes, is one of the show's strangest one-off characters, the kind of figure who arrives with a great deal of authority and leaves having done very little. He is, in his few appearances, profoundly bored. He is exhausted. He has been doing his job for, the show implies, a very long time, and he is no longer particularly interested in whether the schools he inspects pass or fail. The series plays him for comedy, but the underlying portrait is, again, of an adult in this universe who has been worn down by his work to the point where he is, functionally, going through the motions. What unsettles is that this is the figure responsible for whether the children of Elmore are getting an adequate education. The show is honest that the systems above the school are no more functional than the school itself, that there is no rescue coming from a higher authority, and that the institutions of this fictional town are propped up by adults who are mostly just trying to make it to the end of the working day. Mr. Yuki, Masami's father, is the kind of background figure whose presence the show plays as both threatening and pathetic. He is a wealthy man, the head of a corporation, a figure of, in his own world, considerable power. The series, when it shows him in person, shows you a small, anxious creature surrounded by his employees, none of whom seem to particularly like him. His relationship with his daughter is conducted, mostly, at a distance. He is, the show implies, a man who has spent his life building a fortune and a status that have not in fact translated into the kind of family life he probably imagined he was buying. The implication is that Masami's behavior at school, her need to be the center of attention, her desperate small cruelties, are the natural product of being raised by a father who has never been there and a mother who has never been emotionally present. She is not, in a strict sense, neglected. She has, by every material measure, more than the other children at her school. The series is honest that material care and actual care are not the same thing, and that her loneliness is a kind that money has, in some sense, made worse rather than better. The coach, who appears in physical education scenes at Gumball's school, is a tough, gruff, slightly comic figure whose pedagogical method involves a great deal of shouting and a great deal of physical hardship. The show plays him as comedy. It also makes clear that he is, in functional terms, mistreating his students. He pushes them too hard. He humiliates them. He fails to notice when they are hurt. The series is honest that this is one of the standard adult presences in the school the children of Elmore attend. Again, what gets to you is the gentleness with which the show holds this up. The coach is not a monster. He is just, in his own way, a man who has been allowed by the institution around him to be the kind of teacher he wants to be, with very little oversight. The school of Elmore is not. The series is making clear in 1,000 small ways across the run, a particularly safe place. It is being held together by a head teacher who is in love with a very old ape, a counselor who lives in a van, a coach who treats children as recruits, and an actual giant who is being kept calm by his witch mother. The cumulative portrait is one of an institution that is, by any reasonable measure, in trouble, and that the children inside it have adapted to as if it were normal, because they have nothing else to compare it to. The Donut Sheriff's son, sometimes called Donut Cop, is one of the show's quieter generational portraits. He has, the series implies, grown up watching his father do this job. He has, by the time we meet him, inherited it. He is a younger, slightly more idealistic version of his father, and the show is honest that he is going to become his father. There is no scenario in which this town is going to suddenly become a place where a donut cop can flourish. There is no career trajectory in which he is going to leave Elmore and become something else. He has inherited his father's badge, his father's responsibilities, his father's resentments, and the series is honest that this is how small towns work. You become your parents' job, and then you do it, and then you watch your own child come of age, in time to inherit it from you. What you carry away is not anything dramatic. It is the slow, quiet machinery of a place that does not particularly let its citizens become anything other than what they were born into. Marvin Finkelheimer, who we mentioned briefly earlier, deserves a longer look, because he is one of the show's most consistently used vessels for thinking about old age. He has, the series shows you across many episodes, a wife who appears occasionally and is treated with the same combination of comic and melancholy that the show extends to all of its long-married couples. He has a life that the show implies, in small details, was once quite different. He had a job, he had ambitions, he had, at some point, a sense of himself as a person with something to do in the world, and now he shops, and he waits in lines, and he goes home to a quiet house, and he appears in the background of episodes about other people. The series is gentle with him. It is also honest. Marvin Finkelheimer is what most of the adults of Elmore are going to become, and the show is willing to let you sit with that, every so often, when it pans across a supermarket aisle and finds him there. Patrick Fitzgerald, Penny's father, has already been covered, but his arc across the series is worth revisiting briefly because of one detail the show is careful to make clear. He is not a stranger to the show. He has, the series implies, spent his own life inside one. He too was raised under the family rule. He too was told that his real shape was unacceptable. He too has been, for as long as he has been alive, holding himself inside a containment he did not choose. The implication is that Patrick's cruelty toward his daughters is, in a real sense, an inherited cruelty. The cruelty of a man who has spent his life suffering inside a rule, and who cannot bear the idea that his children might be allowed to do otherwise. The show is, again, sympathetic. It is also honest. Patrick is not the original source of the lie. He is one more generation of it. And the series is willing to imply, in moments, that breaking the lie costs the older generation something they may not be able to recover, that part of the reason these rules persist is that the people enforcing them have already lost something by following them, and need everyone else to lose it too, in order to make their own losses feel survivable. There is a question, asked across the series in various small ways, of what Elmore actually is. The town does not behave like a normal town. Its geography is unstable. Its laws of physics are inconsistent. Its citizens come from a startling range of biological and existential categories. There are humans, animals, foodstuffs, abstract concepts, ghosts, machines, all attending the same schools, all paying the same taxes, all treating this arrangement as if it were perfectly ordinary. The interpretive reading the show invites, sometimes openly, is that Elmore is not a town. It is a kind of holding space. It is a place where things that should not exist together have agreed, by mutual exhaustion, to coexist. What this implies about the children is harder to set down. The children of Elmore are growing up inside a world whose underlying logic is, by any reasonable measure, broken. They are learning to navigate impossibilities. They are forming friendships across categories that should not even have a shared language. The series is honest that this kind of adaptation comes at a cost, that the children of this town are, in subtle ways, not entirely the children any of their parents intended to raise. The Void, which we touched on briefly with Rob, is worth a longer look, because it is one of the show's most genuinely original ideas and one of its most quietly disturbing. The Void is the place, in the show's universe, where things go when they are no longer wanted. The episode that introduces it is structured as a kind of tour, in which Gumball and Darwin enter the Void and see what is in there. What is in there is, in plain terms, the things the show abandoned. Half-drawn characters, plot lines that did not quite work, background figures who were never given names. The Void is, the series is openly telling you, a kind of garbage dump for fiction, and the people inside it are not really people, in the sense of people the show is willing to develop, but they are, the show is also clear, alive enough to suffer. They know they have been forgotten. They know that nothing is coming for them. They know that, somewhere outside the Void, the story is going on without them, and that they will not be part of it. The implication, when you sit with it, is that the series is showing you something honest about the nature of its own medium. Television writes some people in and some people out, and the ones who get written out do not, in any real sense, stop existing within the fiction. They exist in a kind of permanent backstage, waiting for a return that, for most of them, is not going to come. The Void's inhabitants, taken collectively, are one of the show's clearest meta-arguments. They are, the series implies, the cost of the show. The reason Gumball and Darwin and Anais are vivid, fully realized characters is that other characters were not. The reason the Wattersons get most of the screen time is that the citizens of Elmore mostly do not. And the show, in a way no other animated comedy has quite managed to do, is willing to look at the people it has chosen not to develop and to give them, briefly, a voice. The Void is full of people who would have been protagonists if the show had been about them. The series is honest that this is, in some sense, the nature of stories, that every story is made out of the absence of other stories. It is also honest that, on the show's own terms, this is a kind of quiet violence. The Void is the show's confession that being a piece of fiction is, for most fictional things, an unkind thing to be. Rob, returning to him after The Void, is the show's clearest portrait of what awareness of this fact does to a person. He came out of The Void knowing he had been almost erased. He came out knowing that his existence was, in the strictest sense, contingent, and that he had been very nearly written out of his own life. And he came out wanting revenge against the only thing he could plausibly hold responsible, which was the protagonists of the show. The show's later seasons treat Rob with surprising tenderness. They are willing, in a way most cartoons are not, to imply that his villainy is, in a real sense, justified. He was a person who was nearly killed by his own writers. He was a person who came back with the only tool he had, which was rage. And the series is willing to put him next to Gumball in some of its quieter moments, and acknowledge that the difference between them is, in some sense, just the difference between which one of them the show happened to choose. Gumball is the protagonist because someone decided he was. Rob is the antagonist because someone decided he was not. The show, in its more honest moments, is willing to admit that this could have gone either way, and that the universe of Elmore is, at its core, a place where the line between being someone and being nothing is thinner than anyone living inside it would prefer to know. There is a recurring idea in the show, never quite stated as a theory but present often enough to count as an argument, that the citizens of Elmore are vaguely aware of being watched. The fourth wall, in this show, is not really a wall. It is a permeable membrane that characters cross frequently, sometimes for jokes, sometimes for plot reasons, sometimes for moments of genuine, quiet horror. The series has episodes in which characters speak directly to the audience. The show has episodes in which characters discuss the structure of their own world as a piece of fiction. And the show, in some of its more striking moments, lets you see characters who seem to be aware that they are being watched, without quite knowing by whom. The implication is that this is not a quirk of the protagonists. It is, the series implies, a feature of the world. Some characters know that they are characters, some do not. The ones who do not are in some sense lucky, because the ones who do are mostly miserable about it. There is a fan theory, well established across the show's fan communities, that the entire world of Elmore is a kind of simulation, a constructed environment whose rules are being maintained by something outside it. The theory is not officially confirmed. It is not, strictly speaking, canon. The show has played with the idea openly enough that it is worth treating seriously. The theory rests on a few observations. The town's geography is, as we said, unstable. Its citizens are biologically incompatible. Its physics shift between episodes. Its narrative logic obeys the rules of television rather than the rules of reality. And the series is, in some of its more meta episodes, willing to acknowledge all of this, sometimes by having characters do so themselves. The interpretive reading is that the show is, in a quiet way, telling you that Elmore is not a real place even within its own fictional universe, that it is a kind of constructed environment, whose inhabitants are not entirely natural inhabitants. Where this leads, if you follow it, is what this would mean for the people inside it. Their lives, their losses, their loves, would all be, in some sense, the property of whoever was running the simulation. The show does not make this argument outright. It simply keeps providing evidence that you can, if you want to, read this way. Gumball himself, returning to him after the void and the simulation reading, becomes a different kind of character when you frame him this way. He is, in this reading, the inhabitant of the simulation who is closest to being aware of it. He is not, as far as the show ever quite states, conscious of being a fiction. He is, in 100 small moments, aware of something. He is aware that his life follows patterns he did not choose. He is aware that his school, his family, his town, behave in ways that do not quite add up. He is aware that the rules of cause and effect bend around him in ways that feel, every so often, performed, and the series is honest about how this weighs on him. There is a sadness in Gumball, in the later seasons, that the early seasons did not really have. He is funnier by the end of the series, but he is also more tired. He has been through more. He has watched more of his friends and family go through things that should not have happened to them, and he has, by the show's end, started to look like a child who is no longer entirely sure his life makes sense. The implication, which the show invites without confirming, is that this is what awareness of one's own fictionality would feel like, that it would not feel like horror, exactly, but like a slow, low-grade fatigue, a sense that the colors are right, but the meaning is not. Darwin, by contrast, never seems to be aware in this way. He is, in this reading, the simulation's most innocent inhabitant, the character who never quite catches a glimpse of the strings. The show, in its quieter moments, treats this as a kind of grace. Darwin is happy. Darwin loves his family. Darwin loves the world. Darwin has, since the moment he came out of his bowl, treated everything around him as a gift. And the series is honest that this is, in some sense, the best way to live, even, or especially, if your life is a fiction. The melancholy edge, if there is one, is that Darwin is the only character in the cast who seems to have arrived at this state, and that the show is not particularly hopeful about anyone else getting there. Most of the citizens of Elmore are, in their own ways, struggling. Darwin is, somehow, not. And the show treats him with a kind of careful tenderness, as if he were a fragile and rare thing, which, in the world this show has built, he plainly is. Anais' intelligence, returning to her after the broader portrait of her family, takes on a different shape when you sit with it for a while. The show, across its run, gives her several episodes in which her intelligence is the engine of the plot, and the engine is, almost without exception, a wheel of suffering. She solves problems no one else can solve. She is rewarded with isolation. She tries to fit in with children her own age. She is rewarded with condescension. She tries, sometimes, to pretend to be less than she is. She is rewarded with the suspicion of the adults around her, who can tell something is being hidden but cannot understand what. What does not let up is that the show does not give her a way out. Anais is going to grow up. Anais is going to be, by every measure the show offers, exceptional. The series is honest that being exceptional in a place like Elmore is a kind of curse, that the people around her are not going to suddenly catch up, that she is going to spend her life, by all available evidence, ahead of everyone she knows. The show treats this with surprising delicacy. There is a softness in how it depicts her loneliness that suggests the writers were, in some real sense, thinking about people they knew. Anais is the smartest character in the show. The series, gently, lets you see that this is not the same as being lucky. The Watterson household, taken as a whole, is one of the show's quiet arguments. They are not, by any normal measure, doing well. Their finances are precarious. Their children are at a school whose adults cannot really be trusted. Their neighbors despise them. Their extended families are complicated. Their own personal histories contain wounds that have not closed and may never close. And yet the show insists, repeatedly and clearly, that they love each other. The Wattersons are not a functional family in any of the ways the rest of the show's families are not. They are, the series keeps showing you, a family that has decided to keep trying. Richard's laziness is not a moral failure. Nicole's anger is not a moral failure. Gumball's chaos and Darwin's softness and Anais's loneliness are not, individually, fixable problems. They are the conditions under which the family operates, and the show is honest that the family operates anyway. The gentlest argument, the one that also has weight, is that this is what family is. You do not get a version of these people that has been cleaned up. You get the ones in your kitchen, with all of their inheritances, and you decide, every day, to keep being their family anyway. The Robinsons, by contrast, deserve another moment, because their household is the show's clearest portrait of what happens when that decision is no longer being made. They are still married. They are still in the same house. They are still, in technical terms, a family. They have stopped doing the daily work of choosing each other. The series is honest about how this happened. They got tired. They got disappointed. They got, over the years, slowly worn down by the small unkindnesses they could not stop themselves from offering each other. By the time we meet them, they are living parallel lives in the same house, separated by walls of habit and resentment that would, the show implies, be very difficult to bring down. The contrast with the Wattersons is the thing that hurts. The Wattersons and the Robinsons live next door to each other. They have, by all available evidence, comparable resources. They have, by all available evidence, comparable problems. The difference is that one household has chosen to keep loving each other, and the other has not. And the show is honest that this difference is, in the long run, the only difference that matters. Penny's grandmother, who appears in a small number of episodes, deserves a moment, because she is the show's window into the older generation of the Fitzgerald family. She is, the series makes very clear, the source of the rule. She is the one who told Patrick the things he told Penny. She is the one who insisted that the shell was non-negotiable. The show is, when it shows her, both sympathetic and unflinching. She is not evil. She is a woman who grew up inside a culture that taught her that her shape was wrong, and who passed that lesson on because, in her own life, it had felt like the only way to survive. The piece that lands is the chain. Penny's grandmother taught Patrick. Patrick taught Penny. Penny, the show is hopeful, is going to break the chain. The series is honest that the chain has been there a long time, and that the cost of carrying it, for everyone who carried it, was higher than they let themselves know. Granny Jojo and Frankie, returning to them after introducing them, are worth another look, because their reunion, when the show finally engineers it, is one of the series' quietest episodes. They do not have a fight. They do not have a tearful reconciliation. They have, instead, a conversation in which Jojo tells Frankie, more or less, what she has been carrying for several decades, and in which Frankie, more or less, listens. The show does not make either of them into a hero. They are both, the series is honest, people who failed at the thing they were trying to do. Frankie failed at being a husband and a father. Jojo failed at telling the truth. The show treats them with a kind of quiet, exhausted respect. The respect of a series that knows that most of the time when families fall apart, it is not because anyone in particular is a monster, but because everyone involved is a person who could not, in the moment, do better than they did. The piece that lands quietly is that Richard is in the room for some of this. Richard is hearing, for the first time, the full shape of what happened to him as a child. The series is honest that this kind of understanding does not heal the wound. It just lets you see it more clearly. There is a thread in the show, easy to miss if you are not watching for it, that has to do with how the show treats its background population. Elmore is full of people who are not the protagonists. They appear in crowd scenes. They walk past in the malls. They sit behind counters and answer phones and drive cars and live, in some sense, the same kinds of lives the protagonists are living, but without the camera. The series, in a handful of episodes, is willing to look at them. There is an episode that follows a background character for the duration. There is an episode that gives a name to someone the show has been showing you for years without identifying. The show, in moments like these, is making a quiet argument about empathy, about the difference between the people we center and the people we do not. What the series makes openly is the implication that the people we do not center are still alive, in the same town, with the same problems, and that the camera's choice to not be on them is, in some sense, an injustice. The show is honest about this. It is, in its quiet way, one of the few cartoons that ever really tried to treat its background population as people. There is also a thread in the show about authority that is worth following. The adults of Elmore, taken collectively, are not really in charge. The teachers are tired or cruel or absent. The police are pastry. The institutions are visibly hollow. The town's government is barely depicted. The school's principal is in love with the cruelest member of his own staff. The series is, when you watch it across the seasons, telling you, over and over, that no one is coming. The children of this town are going to have to figure it out themselves, because the adults around them are mostly trying to figure it out themselves and have not arrived. The show treats this as normal. It is not framed as a crisis. It is framed as the ordinary condition of the world. The children of Elmore have grown up inside an environment in which the authority figures are visibly inadequate, and they have, in their own quiet way, accepted this. They turn to each other. They build their own moral structures. They figure out, between themselves, what they think is right and wrong. The series is honest that this is what childhood is, in many places, in many lives. The adults are not really in charge. The children are doing it themselves. The show is just willing to look at this directly in a way most cartoons are not. The show itself, taken as an object in the world, has its own backstory that is worth thinking about briefly. It was created by a writer named Ben Bachelet, who developed it from a set of unused character designs he had collected from his earlier advertising work. The series was, in its early conception, a kind of recycling project, a way of giving second lives to drawings that had not made it into other media. And the show's mixed media style, the combination of two-dimensional animation with three-dimensional models, with photographic backgrounds, with live-action elements, is in part the natural result of that. The show is, in a very literal sense, built out of the discarded. It is a series whose protagonists are, in the most direct way the medium allows, the kind of figures who would not, in most other shows, have been the protagonists. The piece that aches, in the production history, is that the show ended before it was done. It was canceled, or paused, or however the network chose to phrase it, before its planned final season could be made. The story did not finish. The characters did not arrive at the endings the writers had imagined. The series, like its own void, contains a kind of permanent suggestion of what might have been, an unfinished arc that the people who made it have, in subsequent years, said they still want to complete. As far as fans have pieced together, plans for a continuation have been moving forward, although the exact shape of what arrives, and when, we will treat here as the unverified hope it is. There is a moment in the final stretch of the show, before the cancellation, where the writers seem to have known what was happening. The last few episodes contain, the interpretive reading invites, a strange weight, a sense of things being left unfinished, a heightened awareness within the series itself that the world being depicted is not going to get a proper ending. Characters look, in those last episodes, slightly older than they used to. Conversations carry, in their cadence, a slightly more elegiac tone. The show, knowing it was about to be paused, did what it could to leave its citizens in places that would, in some sense, hold. It could not, in the time it had, give everyone the conclusion they deserved. The void, in this reading, is not just a metaphor for the people the show did not develop. It is, in the show's final stretch, a kind of premonition. The writers knew by the end that the characters they had built were going to be left waiting for something the medium was not going to give them. The series was honest, in its quiet way, about how unfair that was. The Watterson children, in the last episodes of the show, look like children who are, in some sense, aware that the camera is about to stop. They are not quite the same as they were in the first season. Gumball is older. Darwin is older. Anais is, somehow, exactly the same and yet noticeably worn down by the things she has seen. The series, in these later episodes, is willing to slow down. It is willing to let scenes breathe. It is willing to give its characters small moments of nothing happening, of just being in their kitchen or their bedroom or their car, of just being a family for the length of a take. Sit with it, and you feel the awareness that these are, for the time being, the last quiet moments the show is going to give them. The series, when it ended in the middle of a kind of held breath. The breath has not yet been fully released. Penny, in the last episodes, is similarly somewhere on the threshold. She has broken her shell. She has confronted her father. She is, by every measure the show offers, more herself than she has ever been. The show, knowing it was about to pause, did not give her a final scene. She is still in school. She is still in love with Gumball. She is still figuring out what her life is going to be when she is no longer in the world of the show. The piece that hangs is that we do not, in any verified way, know what is going to happen to her. The fans have theorized, the show has implied, none of it is confirmed. The series, in its honesty about the kinds of stories it could tell, left her in a place where she could become almost anything, and then stopped. Rob, by contrast, the show did manage to give a kind of arc to. His final appearances are, in their own way, surprisingly hopeful. The series, in its later stretch, treats him as less of an antagonist and more of a confused, broken person who has, in some sense, been failed by everything around him. The show does not let him win. The show does not let him lose. The series leaves him, more or less, alive, in the world, doing what he can with what he has, and the implication is that this is, by Rob's standards, a kind of victory. What lingers is that the show, in its honesty about how unfair its own production was to him, could not give him more. He is one of the characters the medium, in the end, failed. The series is, in its quiet way, willing to admit that. The show's portrayal of money is worth thinking about as its own kind of backstory, because it shapes almost every adult character in the cast. The Wattersons are not, by any normal measure, doing well financially. Their house is in a constant state of disrepair. Their bills are a recurring source of stress. Their car is, at any given moment, somewhere on the spectrum between unreliable and broken. The series is honest about this. There are episodes that hinge entirely on the family being unable to afford something. There are episodes in which Nicole has to take extra work. There are episodes in which Richard, in his own way, tries to participate in the economy and fails. The implication is that this is the normal condition of the families in Elmore. The Wattersons are not particularly unusual. The Wilsons, the Robinsons, the Fitzgeralds, the various other families the show depicts, are all in various states of financial strain, with the Yukis as the visible exception. The series is honest that the Yukis, who do have money, are demonstrably the most unhappy family in the show. The show is not, in any didactic way, telling you that money is the problem. It is just telling you that having it is not the answer, and that not having it is not the answer either, and that the families in this town are all, in their own ways, doing the best they can with the resources they have. Nicole's anger, returning to her after we have met her parents and her household, takes on a different shape when you frame it inside the financial portrait. She is the family's only consistent earner. She is the one keeping the bills paid. She is, by every measure the show offers, doing the work. The series is honest that this is, in part, where her exhaustion comes from. She is not just emotionally tired, she is materially tired. She is doing 2 adults' worth of providing in a household where the other adult, by his own admission, is not really capable of helping. The show, in some of its more grown-up episodes, is willing to let you see what this costs her, not just emotionally, not just in terms of patience, but in terms of the small physical erosions that come from doing too much for too long. There is an episode in which Nicole simply takes a day off, in which she leaves the house and does nothing, and the episode treats this as a kind of religious moment, a holy and rare event. The piece the show is unflinching about is that she has earned this many times over and is going to get it almost never. She is a mother who is going to be tired for the rest of her life, and the series is honest that the love she has for her family is the only thing that makes the tiredness bearable, not the only thing that makes it less tired. Richard's relationship with employment is its own quiet thread across the show. He has, the series makes clear in flashbacks and in scattered episodes, tried to work. He has tried to be an adult. He has tried, in various ways, to participate in the economy. He has, in almost every case, failed. The show is honest about the texture of this failure. It is not, mostly, that he is incapable. It is, the series implies, that he is afraid. He is afraid of the specific kind of failure that adult life seems to demand you risk. He is afraid that if he commits to something, and it does not work, he will be exactly what his father, in his absence, suggested he might be, and so he does not commit. He sits in the kitchen. He eats a sandwich. He watches television. He is, in the most literal sense, the inheritor of his father's leaving. The boy who decided, somewhere along the way, that the safest way to not be left was to not arrive in the first place. What stays with you is the show's honesty about how comfortable this has become. Richard is not, in his own perception, suffering. He is fine. He is in his kitchen. He is eating a sandwich. The series is honest that this is, in some ways, the most depressing version of the story, the version in which the wound has been so completely accommodated that the person carrying it no longer notices. Anais' stuffed Daisy the donkey, the toy she carries everywhere, is worth a moment, because the show has done several things with it across the series. She talks to it. She treats it, in 1,000 small ways, as a being. The series, in a few episodes, plays with the idea that the toy may in fact be a being. There is an episode that makes very clear that the donkey is, by some criterion, not quite an ordinary toy. The show is playful about this. It does not commit to a metaphysics. The implication, in the broader context of the show's universe, is that Anais is the smartest child in town, and that the smartest child in town has chosen, of all the things she could choose to attach herself to, a stuffed donkey, and that the series is honest about why. She is lonely. The toy is constant. The toy is, in the way only inanimate objects can be, dependable. The piece the show lets you feel without quite saying is that Anais has, in her own quiet way, decided that the safest place to put her love is into something that cannot leave her. She is 4 years old and she has already made that decision. The school environment, taken as its own character, is one of the show's quieter horrors. The school of Elmore is a strange place. Its hallways shift between episodes. Its rules shift between episodes. Its physical structure is, at any given moment, somewhere on the spectrum between a school and a kind of hostile architectural creature. The series has episodes in which the school itself becomes the antagonist, in which the building seems to have intentions of its own, in which the lockers eat students or the cafeteria food fights back. The interpretive reading the show invites is that the school is, in some sense, alive. It is, in some sense, watching its students. It is, in some sense, not on their side. The unsettling thing is that this does not really matter for the way the children navigate it. They go to class anyway. They eat the cafeteria food anyway. They open their lockers anyway. The school is, like Mr. Cuddles in the kitchen, a thing the citizens of this town have decided not to think about too carefully, because thinking about it carefully would make it impossible to keep going. The cafeteria, specifically, deserves its own moment. The food served at Gumball's school is, the show is honest, terrible. It is, in some episodes, actively dangerous. The cafeteria worker, who appears in many episodes as a kind of recurring shadowy figure, treats the food more as a substance to be served than as a substance fit for consumption. The series plays this for jokes, of course, because it plays everything for jokes. The implication, when you sit with it, is one of the show's clearer indictments of how the adults of this town treat their children. The food is bad. The food is not nutritious. The food is, on occasion, openly hostile to the digestive systems of the students. And no one in the institution above the cafeteria has done anything about it. The School of Elmore is a school that does not feed its students well, and the series is honest about how universal this kind of small neglect is, across institutions, across decades, across the lives of children everywhere. The bus, the school bus driven by Rocky, is one of the show's more affectionate spaces. It is loud, it is chaotic, it is, in some episodes, falling apart. But it is also, the series is careful to show you, a space where the children of Elmore have, in their own way, made a kind of community. They sit together, they argue together, they have inside jokes together, they have, the show implies, an entire small culture that exists only on the bus, that does not survive the moment they step off it. The gentle piece, gentle as it is that this culture is being held together by a man who is barely paid, who lives with his parents, who is in his own way running a small, fragile community out of the goodness of his exhausted heart. Rocky is, in a sense the series is willing to make explicit, doing the work of the institution. The school is not providing the children with this space. Rocky is. And the school is not, by any visible mechanism, ever going to thank him for it. Carrie's existence as a ghost, returning to her after we have met her father, raises a set of questions the show has, characteristically, refused to fully resolve. How did she die? When did she die? Why is she still 12 years old? The series provides hints. The show provides moments. The show does not provide an answer. The interpretive reading invited is that the show does not want to answer, because the question is, in some sense, the wrong question. Carrie's deadness is not a mystery to be solved. It is a condition she lives in. The series is, in its honest moments, more interested in what it is like to be her than in how she got that way. There is an episode in which Carrie possesses Gumball, in which she takes over his body briefly so that she can experience taste, and the episode is, in its own quiet way, one of the show's saddest. She is a child who has, through whatever combination of bad luck and metaphysics, been denied the experience of being inside a body that feels things. The series is honest about what that does to a person. The Wattersons' kitchen, where so much of the show happens, is its own kind of character. It is, in the show's universe, the closest thing to a stable space. It is where the family gathers. It is where the decisions get made. It is where, by the end of most episodes, everyone ends up. The series is, in its way, sentimental about this. The kitchen is messy. The kitchen is loud. The kitchen is, by any reasonable measure, not a particularly well-kept room. It is, the show is willing to imply, holy in the way kitchens are holy in families that have decided to be families anyway. What you carry away, if anything, is the series' awareness that this kind of holiness is fragile. The Wattersons' kitchen could, at any moment, become the Robinsons' kitchen. The line between the two households is, as we said, made of choice rather than circumstance. The show is honest that the choice has to be made over and over, in small ways, every day, and that the kitchen is the place where the choice gets made. The show's depiction of death, taken as a whole, is more sustained than you would expect from a comedy aimed at children. Carrie is dead. The Reaper is on staff. Anton dies, by some count, several dozen times across the series. The Watterson family has, in various episodes, faced their own apparent deaths, sometimes for jokes, sometimes for something stranger. The series is, in its own register, deeply curious about death. It does not, mostly, treat death as the end. It treats death as a particular kind of state, a state from which return is, in this universe, often possible. The implication, made very clear in episodes that focus on the subject, is that the show does not particularly believe in finality. People come back, people are revived, people die and then, by the next episode, are fine. The series is honest, in its quieter moments, that this is its own kind of horror, the suggestion that nothing in this universe ever really stops, that the citizens of Elmore are not really able to leave, that they are stuck inside a system in which the natural exit is closed off. Death in Gumball is not the end. The show is honest that this is not necessarily good news. The show's depiction of love, by contrast, is one of its most consistently tender threads. Gumball loves Penny. Carrie loves Darwin. Carmen loves Alan. Mr. Robinson, somewhere very deep down, presumably once loved Margaret. The various marriages and friendships and crushes and attachments are, across the show's run, treated with surprising care. The series is, when it lets itself be sincere, capable of moments that are genuinely moving. The piece worth noting is that the show is honest about how much love costs in this universe. Penny had to break her shell. Carrie has to love someone who will grow up. The Wattersons have to choose each other every day. Mr. Robinson has to live next to his wife. The love is real, the series is saying, but the love is not free. It exacts a toll. It demands maintenance. The people who get to keep it are the ones who have agreed, in advance, to keep paying for it. There is a recurring set of characters the show has not given names to, but that it returns to often enough to count as a kind of community. There are the various small creatures who populate Elmore's parks. There are the various small creatures who populate Elmore's stores. There are the various small creatures who appear in school crowd scenes and who, the series implies in scattered moments, have lives the show has not bothered to tell you about. The Void contains a great many of these. The interpretive reading, again, is that the show is honest about the cost of being a background character, that the people who do not get plot lines are still, in some sense, alive within the fiction. The piece the show is willing to look at directly is that you, the viewer, have probably been watching this series for years, without really seeing any of these people, and that the show is asking you, in its own gentle way, to start. The show's final unaired stretch, which fans have spent years trying to imagine, is worth saying something honest about. We do not know, in any verified way, where the show was going to end. There have been interviews. There have been hints. There have been, in subsequent years, statements from the creator about what he had hoped to do. The specifics are, in the strictest sense, not known. We will not, in this script, speculate about plot beats. We will say only that the series, by its end, had built a world large enough to hold a great many possible endings, and that the cancellation, or pause, or whatever the network chose to call it, deprived us of the one the writers had imagined. There is, as we mentioned, a continuation in some form being prepared. If and when it arrives, we will, in some future video, look at what it does and does not deliver. For tonight, the show ends where it ended, and the characters are still, in some sense, holding their breath. The love story between Gumball and Penny, treated as its own backstory, is one of the most carefully constructed romantic arcs in any animated show of its era. They are, when the series begins, classmates with a vague mutual crush. They are, by the time the series pauses, a couple who have, between them, broken one of the older lies in Penny's family. The show does not, mostly, treat their relationship as the engine of the plot. It treats it as something that is happening, slowly, in the background of their other lives. They go on dates that mostly go wrong. They have arguments that mostly resolve themselves. They have, over the years, accumulated the kind of shared history that real relationships have, the kind made of small jokes and minor crises and the slow accumulation of trust. What the show keeps in view is its awareness that they are children. They are 12 years old, they are going to grow, they are going to change. The series is honest that the love they have, real as it is, has not been tested by any of the things that test adult love. It has been tested by middle school. It has not yet been tested by everything that comes after. The show, in its honest moments, is willing to imply that what they have may not survive what is coming. It is also willing to imply that what they have was, while they had it, real, and that the love between children is not less real than the love between adults, only younger. Mr. Small, returning to him after we have met Steve, deserves one more pass, because his loneliness is one of the show's most quietly devastating ongoing portraits. He has, the series implies in various episodes, no real family of his own outside his brother. He has, the show implies, no romantic partner. He has, the show implies, no real friends, in the sense of people who would notice if he were gone. He has the children at the school, who are his charges and not his peers. He has, in some sense, the van. The series is honest, in the episodes that focus on him, that this is a very small life. What hits is the show's gentleness about it. The show does not punish him for the smallness of his life. The show does not, in any obvious way, even pity him. The series simply lets you see the shape of his days, and lets you understand that this is what some adult lives look like, and that the children he counsels are going to grow up into a world in which some of them, statistically, will become him. There is a tenderness in that portrayal that is one of the show's quiet acts of moral seriousness. Banana Bob, Banana Joe's father, is worth a longer look as well, because the show is honest about him in a way that, for a children's cartoon, is almost startling. He is visibly old. He is visibly, in banana terms, declining. He is the kind of parent who, the series implies, has been spotted with age. His skin has darkened. His structure has softened. He is, in the way bananas are, no longer the man he was. The show, in the episodes that focus on his family, is honest about the fact that his son is watching this happen. Banana Joe knows what is coming for his father. Banana Joe knows what is coming for himself. The show plays this, as always, with jokes. The jokes do not really cover the underlying fact. The Banana family is a family whose biological clock runs faster than the rest of the town's, and they have, between them, decided to be cheerful about it because the alternative is impossible to live with. The dignity in that decision, the way the show treats it not as denial but as choice, is what gets to you. The bananas have looked at their condition and chosen joy. The series is honest that this is, in some ways, the most moving thing it ever shows you. Penny's sister, returning to her after our earlier mention, is the show's quiet hint that the Fitzgerald family's story is not over. She is younger. She is, the series implies, still living inside the old rules. She is the next in a line that Penny has, in her own life, tried to break. The show is honest about how partial the breaking is. Patrick and Polly have softened. The household has changed. The younger daughter is being raised inside a household that is, in measurable ways, less constrained than the one Penny grew up in. The series is also honest that the older rules are still in the walls of the house, and that the younger daughter is going to have to do her own work in her own time to decide what she is going to inherit from her family and what she is not. The show, in some sense, refuses to give the Fitzgerald family a clean ending. It is honest that this kind of generational labor is not the work of a single breakthrough, that one daughter breaking the shell does not free her sister from having to break it again in her own way. The school's cafeteria worker, often referred to in the show simply as the lunch lady, is a small dark presence who appears in several episodes and whose backstory the show fills in only in glimpses. She is, the series implies, doing this job because she has no other job available. She is, the show implies, tired in the way Larry is tired, in the way Mr. Robinson is tired, in the way half the adults of Elmore are tired. The food she serves is, the series is honest, a function of the budget she has been given, which is, the show implies, not really enough for the job she has been asked to do. What sits underneath the joke is structure. The lunch lady is not bad at her job because she is a bad person. She is bad at her job because she has been set up to fail. The series is honest that there is no rescue coming for her, no improvement in the budget, no recognition of the work, no relief from the daily reality of trying to feed several hundred small children with resources that do not really cover it. She is one of the many figures the show keeps in the corner of its frame to remind you, gently, that the bright surface of this world is being held in place by people the camera has mostly not chosen to center. The school's other teachers, who appear in scattered episodes, deserve a brief moment as well, because they fill out the portrait of an institution that is, by any reasonable measure, failing. There is the substitute teacher who appears, briefly, when Miss Simian is unavailable, and who is, in her own way, even more dangerous than the teacher she replaces. There are the various adult figures who appear in single episodes and disappear, the music teacher, the science teacher, the various coaches and supervisors, and adult presences whose names the show, in most cases, does not bother to give you. What the series is honest about is that these are interchangeable, in the institution's eyes, that the children of Elmore are being processed through a system in which the adults are essentially anonymous. The show does not say this out loud, it simply does not name them. And the cumulative effect of all those unnamed adults is, when you sit with it, one of the show's most quiet indictments of how children are treated by the institutions that are supposed to raise them. Mrs. Senecourt, Nicole's mother, deserves a closer look because she is, in some ways, the most complicated figure in Nicole's history. She is, by all the show's evidence, the parent who was more involved in the daily mechanics of Nicole's training, the one who watched her practice, the one who supervised her diet, the one whose voice Nicole still, in some quiet way, hears whenever she is about to make a decision that feels indulgent. The series, when it brings her into the present action, is careful to make her not a monster. She is a woman who, the show implies, was herself raised inside a similar set of expectations, who has done her best to do well by her daughter inside the framework she was handed, who is, in her own way, proud of Nicole, and trying, in her own awkward way, to express that. What the show is unflinching about is that the pride is conditional. Mrs. Senecourt is proud of Nicole when Nicole is winning. Mrs. Senecourt is proud of Nicole when Nicole is the kind of woman the family had hoped to raise. And Nicole, the series is honest, has spent her adult life building a self that is, in significant ways, not that. She is doing well by her own measure. She is not, by her mother's measure, doing well at all. The series is honest that this is the kind of gap that does not close. The mothers and daughters of this world, the show keeps saying, often love each other across a distance that neither of them can fully close, and the love, real as it is not the same thing as understanding. Mr. Senecourt, Nicole's father, is a quieter presence in her backstory, the kind of father who, the show implies, did most of his parenting by example rather than by speech. He is stern. He is, the series implies, disappointed in his daughter without ever quite saying so. He is, in some sense, the figure who shaped Nicole's notion of authority, the one whose silent disapproval she has, the show implies, internalized so completely that she no longer needs him in the room to hear it. The piece that lands is the way Nicole sometimes catches herself being him. There are moments, scattered across the series, when Nicole's anger at her own children has the shape and the rhythm of her father's silence. The series is honest that you do not get to choose which of your parents' voices live inside your head, and that the ones who shaped you most are not always the ones who said the most. The universe, returning to him after our earlier introduction, deserves one more look as well, because his role in the show's metaphysics is one of the more genuinely interesting ideas the series plays with. He appears, in the episodes that focus on him, as a being who is, in some sense, responsible for the way the world of Elmore operates. He is the keeper of the laws. He is the one to whom complaints, in some sense, can be addressed. And the show, in its handling of him, is careful to make clear that he is overworked, distracted, and not particularly invested in any one citizen's specific outcome. The interpretive reading is that the show is offering a kind of theology in which the universe is not absent exactly, but is not really paying attention either, in which the suffering of the citizens of Elmore is not being watched by a malevolent god, but by a tired bureaucrat. What lands is that this is, in many ways, a more honest portrait of how cosmic systems feel from the inside. The universe is not against the people of Elmore. The universe is just not, on any given day, particularly thinking about them. The series is honest that this is, for the people inside the system, often indistinguishable from being abandoned. The show's view of growing up, taken as a whole, is one of the most genuinely melancholy threads in the series. The children of Elmore are, the series implies, going to grow up. They are going to leave the school. They are going to leave the town. They are going to become adults like the ones they have been watching all along, and the adults they have been watching are, by every measure the show offers, not particularly happy. The piece the show is honest about is that the children of Elmore know this. They have seen what the adults look like. They have seen what their parents look like. They have, in their own ways, started to brace for it. There is a sadness in the older episodes of the show, in the way Gumball talks about the future, in the way Anais talks about getting older, in the way Darwin, in his sweetness, keeps trying to hold the present still. The series is honest that childhood, in this universe, ends. The show is honest that this is, by any reasonable measure, a loss. The show, when you look at it from the outside, is one of the most ambitious comedies the medium of children's animation has produced. It is dense, it is strange, it is willing to look at things most cartoons are not willing to look at. And it is, in its quiet moments, deeply sad. What you take away from watching the whole thing is not any one character's backstory. It is the cumulative weight of all of them. The sense that this town is a place in which almost every citizen is carrying something the bright animation is distracting you from. Mr. Robinson is sad. Mr. Small is sad. Larry is sad. Miss Simian is exhausted past all measure. The Robinsons' marriage is broken. The Fitzgerald family has lived inside a lie for generations. The Wattersons are holding it together with love and very little else. And the children at the center of all of this, are the only ones the show is, in any consistent way, hopeful about. The series is willing to believe that the children of Elmore might, if they are lucky, become slightly better adults than the ones they have inherited. The show is honest that this is, in any town, the most you can hope for. There is a quiet running idea in the show, present from very early on, that the universe of Elmore is, in some sense, a kind of test. The characters are being put through scenarios. The town is throwing situations at them. The school is functioning as a kind of laboratory in which children are being shaped, day by day, by the things that happen to them. The interpretive reading invites you to think of the show as an experiment in resilience, in what kinds of people are produced by what kinds of environments. What unsettles is that the experiment is, in many cases, producing the wrong outcomes. The town is, in many of the show's stories, breaking the people inside it. The school is, in many of the show's stories, hardening the children rather than helping them. The series is honest about this. It does not pretend the system works. It does not pretend the children come out fine. It simply shows you the system working as it does, and lets you see who survives it and who does not. The Watterson family, by the end of the show, has survived. They are still in their kitchen. They are still in their car. They are still, in some sense, the family they have always been. And the show is, in its closing stretch, honest about how lucky this is. It did not have to go this way. They could have been the Robinsons. They could have been the Fitzgeralds. They could have been any of the other families in this town. They are not, in the strictest sense, special. They are just, by the grace of choice and circumstance, still choosing each other. The series is honest that this kind of luck is the only kind any of us really get, that the families that stay together are the ones that keep deciding to, and that the decision is, every day, available to be made again, and that the harder edge, the thing that holds all of these character profiles together, is that the decision is also, every day, available to be unmade. That is what every backstory in this show is really about. It is about the moment when someone in someone else's past decided one way or the other, and about what the rest of that person's life had to become because of it. Granny Jojo chose to lie to Richard. Patrick Fitzgerald chose to enforce the shell. The Senecourts chose to push Nicole. Frankie Watterson chose to leave. The various adults of Elmore chose, in their own small ways, what to do with their lives. The children of the show, the ones at the center of every episode, are living with the consequences of those choices. In 1,000 small ways, every day they are on screen. The series is honest about this. The show is, in some sense, an extended argument that the past is, in any life, the engine of the present, and that the disturbing thing about most people is not anything that has happened to them recently, but the long, quiet chain of things that happened to them before they could even know what was happening. It is worth, in closing this part of the script, returning to the question we started with, which was Richard, in his kitchen, holding the letter that said his father was alive. The show, in that moment, is doing something it does over and over across its run. It is taking a character we have spent years laughing at, and it is letting us, briefly, see the wound underneath. The wound is not, in any specific sense, special. Lots of people have the wound Richard has. Lots of people have grown up believing one thing about their parents and then learned, later, that the thing was not quite true. Lots of people are, even now, walking around with versions of that letter in their hands. The series is saying, in a way few children's cartoons have ever been willing to say, that this is what people are. People are the slow accumulation of the things they were told and the things they were not told. People are the choices the adults around them made, the words those adults did and did not use, the absences they did and did not name. The show is not, in any didactic way, telling you that this is bad. The series is telling you that this is what it is, and that the characters of Elmore, with all of their backstories, are not unusual, they are not extreme, they are not, in any genuine sense, exaggerated. They are, the show is honest, what people look like when you turn the camera on them and refuse to look away. The disturbing thing about Gumball is not the disturbing backstories. It is the moment when you realize the show is not making any of this up. It is just describing what families are. And it is doing it in a softer voice than most other shows have been willing to use. The show, by its end, has built one of the most fully realized fictional communities in the history of children's animation. It has given you a town. It has given you a school. It has given you a family. It has given you 100 small citizens, each with their own quiet weight. It has, in its closing stretches, asked you to consider the possibility that the bright colors and the elastic bodies and the running jokes about toast and bananas and the various small absurdities of the medium were not really the point. The point, the series keeps suggesting, was the people. The point was always the people. The disturbing backstories the show kept tucking into the corners of the frame were not, in any sense, the show being dark for its own sake. They were the show being honest about the lives of the citizens of Elmore, who are, in some quiet way, the lives of all of us. The disturbing thing about the amazing world of Gumball is that it noticed. And so we arrive, gently, at the close. The amazing world of Gumball is a show about a town in which almost every adult is tired, almost every child is afraid of becoming their parents, and almost every relationship is held together by small daily acts of choice that, every so often, falter. It is a show about a family that has chosen, against significant odds, to keep choosing each other. It is a show about a school that is, by every measure, not really keeping its students safe, and about the children who have, in their own ways, learned to keep each other safe instead. It is a show about a fictional universe whose inhabitants suspect, in moments of unusual quiet, that they are inside a fiction, and who, knowing this, continue to live anyway. It is, in the end, a show about the small daily heroism of going on. The characters with disturbing backstories are not, in this show, the exception. They are the rule. The disturbing backstory is, in the world this show built, the ordinary condition of a person, and the series is honest that almost everyone you have ever known is, in some sense, carrying one. The bright colors were never an evasion. They were a way of letting you look at it without having to flinch. And the show, by the end, hopes that you do look at it, and that the looking, however quiet, however brief, makes you a little kinder to the people you meet in your own town, who are, in their own ways, in their own kitchens, holding their own letters. If you have made it this far, I want to thank you for spending this time here. There is something strange and good about staying up late with a show like Gumball, about treating a children's cartoon with the kind of attention you would normally reserve for serious fiction, about being willing to find, in the corners of a comedy, the small sadnesses the writers tucked there for the audience who was paying attention. You were the audience who was paying attention. The show was, in its quiet way, written for you. And every character we have walked through tonight, from Richard in his kitchen, to Penny under her shell, to Hector in his house, to Rob in the void, to the unnamed background figures who never quite made it into the foreground of the show, is, in some sense, a person the series was hoping you would, by being willing to slow down, finally see. They have been waiting for an audience this patient for as long as the show has been on the air. They got it, in you, tonight. So settle into wherever you are and let the last of this drift across you. The Amazing World of Gumball was, for the years it was on television, one of the most genuinely loved animated shows of its decade. It is, even now, a show that fans continue to revisit, continue to write about, continue to study. It is, by every reasonable measure, going to outlast the network that made it. The disturbing backstories we have walked through tonight are, in some sense, the reason for that. The show was honest. The show was honest about families, about marriages, about institutions, about cities, about the kinds of people who get pushed to the edges of stories, and the kinds of people who get put at their centers. The series was, in its quiet way, a great work of moral attention, and the great work of moral attention is, in the long arc of stories, what tends to last. So if you find yourself, tomorrow or next week or next year, thinking about a citizen of Elmore you had not thought about in a while, an old man in a supermarket, a school counselor in a van, a toast child who keeps dying and coming back, a peanut girl with a shell she chose to break. That is the show doing what good shows do. It is staying with you. It is becoming, in some small way, part of how you see the world. And the world, the show would say, is the better for having more people in it who notice the people they were supposed to overlook. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.